NASCAR Grand National Racing has always been known for its great competition, and this year the parity is demonstrated even further by the fact that in 19 races, 12 different drivers have visited the winner's circle. Cale Yarborough at Daytona, Talladega, and Pocono. Ricky Rudd at Richmond. Bobby Allison at Rockingham and Charlotte. Benny Parsons at Atlanta. Darrell Waltrip at Bristol, Darlington, and Nashville. Tim Richmond at North Wilkesboro. Jeff Bodine at Martinsville and Nashville. Richard Petty at Dover and Daytona. Terry Labonte at Riverside. Bill Elliott at Michigan. Harry Gant at Pocono, and Dale Earnhardt at Talladega. Will there be a 13th, or will we see a repeat winner? Stay with us for live coverage of the Champion Spark Plug 400. ESPN, your number one auto racing network, presents from Michigan International Speedway, Auto Racing 84. Sunshiny afternoon as we greet you from Michigan International Speedway. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins along with Larry Newber. This is the most competitive NASCAR season ever. The points battle is close. We've had 12 different winners in 19 races. As we look up front for today's race, we see a couple of so-called youngsters, Bill Elliott and Phil Parsons.
You might say it's kind of a surprise front row. Certainly not for Bill Elliott. This is the 5th time in his career that this young racer from Georgia has been up front on the pole position. But for Phil Parsons, his first time ever on the front row. Both of those people want to do very well, of course, here today.
Dick Berggren, the editor of Stock Car Racing magazine, will be in the pit area for today's activity. Here's Dick.
Bob, it's going to be a pretty frantic race this afternoon. All of these teams think all the Grand National races are important, but this one is especially important. Right now is when the major corporations are determining their 1985 advertising budgets, including sponsorship advertising budgets. So they need to look really well here this afternoon. There are a lot of teams looking for a limited amount of money, including Bud Moore's team, Robert Harrington's team, the Raymock team, Hoss Ellington's team, the Race Hill Farms team, Trevor Boyd's team. They need to do well here this afternoon in order to attract that money. And in addition, there are a lot of driver changes afoot here. So everybody wants to do well. About 50% of the teams are in flux. Bob?
Thank you, Dick. Today's Champion Spark Plug 400 is brought to you by Pontiac. Test drive a new Pontiac at your Pontiac dealer, because at Pontiac, we build excitement. By Levi Garrett Chewing Tobacco. Time after time, the quality comes through. And by world-famous Bardol. Get Bardol, the engine saver. We'll be back with the starting lineup for today's Champion Spark Plug 400 in just a moment. The 40 cars in today's Champion Spark Plug 400 begin to move away onto the high banks of Michigan International Speedway. It's a beautiful day. The temperature is 70 degrees, winds from the north at about 10 miles an hour. There is a 20% chance of rain, 81% humidity, but right now we have partly sunny skies and beautiful conditions. The cars come off of turn number 2 and head down the backstretch, and we check now for you the starting lineup for today's Champion Spark Plug 400 from Michigan International. On the pole from Dawsonville, Georgia, in the Coors-smelling Ford, Bill Elliott in car number 9. Outside row 1, car number 66, Phil Parsons from Denver, North Carolina, in the Eckerd Gold Bandit Chevy. Second row, car number 33, Harry Gant from Taylorsville, North Carolina, in the Gold Bandit Chevrolet. Outside of row number 2, David Pearson from Spartanburg, South Carolina, in the Chattanooga Chew Chevy number 16. In the third row, car number 55, Benny Parsons from Ellerby, North Carolina, in the Copenhagen Chevrolet. Outside of row number 3, Terry Labonte, car number 44. He's from Trinity, North Carolina, drives the Piedmont Airlines Chevy. Row number 4, car 11, Darrell Waltrip from Franklin, Tennessee in the Budweiser Chevy. And alongside in row number 4 will be Rusty Wallace from Greensboro, North Carolina in the number 88 Gatorade Pontiac. Fifth row, car number 28, Cale Yarborough from Timminsville, South Carolina in the Hardy Chevrolet. Outside of row number 5 from Chesapeake, Virginia, Ricky Rudd, car number 15, the Wrangler Jeans Ford. In the 6th row, Tim Richmond from Northville, North Carolina in the number 27 Old Milwaukee Pontiac. Outside of row number 6, the driver of car number 5, Jeff Bodine from Pleasant Garden, North Carolina in the Northwestern Security Life Chevrolet. The rest of the lineup, 7th row, Joe Rutman and Dale Earnhardt. 8th row, Dave Marcus and Jody Ridley. In row number 9, Ron Bouchard and Buddy Baker. 10th row, Rodney Combs and Lake Speed. In the 11th row, Neil Bonnet and Richard Petty. 12th row, Greg Saxon, Bobby Hillen Jr. 13th row, Clark Dwyer and Kyle Petty. 14th row, Sterling Marlin and Buddy Arrington. In row number 15, Ronnie Thomas and Trevor Boyes. 16th row, Bobby Allison and Morgan Shepard. Row number 17 consists of Tommy Ellis and Dean Combs. 18th row, Jimmy Means and Mike Alexander. Row number 19, Doug Hebron and Dick Brooks. And in the 20th row, Ken Schrader and Jeff Hooker.
Well, if ever there were parity being shown in this series, it would be the fact that 300 victories are starting behind 20th position today. There's a man who, however, has never won a Grand National stock car race. Rodney Combs, he qualified very well here today in 19th position. He'll be starting back there with Richard Petty, Bonnet, and Lake Speed. He'll be in that group. Now, Rodney is a graduate of the late model racing in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. He's been spending most of the last couple of years, however, running on the dirt tracks, the NDRA and All-Star circuit. He's in the former Jim Stacy, now Booby Harrington team here at Michigan this week.
The track is 2 miles in length. We'll go 200 laps to make up the champion Spark Plug 400. Bill Elliott leads them down toward the green flag. Harold Kinder waves the green, and we are underway. This racetrack leads to drafting and always excitement. As you can see, they're going 4 abreast through turn number 1. At the front of the pack, they're being led off of turn number 2 down the backstretch by pole sitter Bill Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia. Kind of a hometown favorite. His car owner hails from Jackson, Michigan, which is the largest city close to Michigan International Speedway. And Bill has a win on this racetrack. You can see he's opened up a considerable advantage here in the opening lap as the drivers battle for second position. Here they come off of turn 4 for the completion of lap 1. Elliott runs first, then it's Harry Gant, followed by Phil Parsons, David Pearson, and Terry Labonte.
Well, Bob, I believe that the word awesome is overused in contemporary modern society, but I got to tell you, it is probably the only word appropriate to describe the way Elliott has dominated this field this week. He was about a half a second faster than everybody and almost 1.5 miles per hour quicker than the remainder of the field.
Cale Yarborough making a move toward the front. He's running alongside Dale Earnhardt right now with Tim Richmond trailing. Cale is up high on the racetrack and allows both Earnhardt and Tim Richmond to slip by. Pursuing that group is Jeff Bodine and Ricky Rudd. Once again, off of turn number 4, this completes lap number 2. Bill Elliott still has the lead. And Harry Gant still runs in second position. The black flag is being given to number 48, Trevor Boyes, who had a terrible accident at Daytona, or rather at Talladega, earlier this year.
There you see that battle for, about 5th through 12th. There's a lot of this 2, 3, 4, and even sometimes 5 abreast racing here at the Michigan International Speedway, and this is just typical of what you'd expect. Also, the track seems to be very easy on the cars. About 30 cars always seem to finish here at Michigan International Speedway. It can have a dramatic effect on the season-long point standing. There you see a large contingent of people, and really doesn't do any good at this moment, at least, to say what position they're fighting for. They're up near the front. That's good enough. And the guy up in the upper right-hand corner of your screen right now is somebody that you can expect to be up near the front all day long. A lot of people watch what happens in that orange and white 28 pit to kind of judge how well they're doing in every Grand National event.
The traditional 3, 4, and sometimes even 5 abreast racing through the tri-oval here at Michigan. This is not a complete oval, but rather a tri-oval. The turns are banked at 18 degrees, and off of turn number 4, instead of a straightaway, there is another turn here in front of the grandstand.
Well, as we watch this large flock of cars fluttering around the Michigan International Speedway. Sorry to report for the Canadian fans that Trevor Boyes has already been in the pits twice. And there's Dale Earnhardt really getting squirrely coming out of turn number 4. You can see it vividly there on your screen. He gathered it back up just in time as Yarborough was right between Earnhardt and the outside wall. Another driver whom we showed you at the top of the show has already been in the pits once also, and that was Rodney Combs. So the attrition, which we don't expect to be great again. Here, look at that racing. Isn't that terrific?
They're in turn number 2, and there are 3 abreast. Among the drivers in this group, the number 88 of Rusty Wallace. Number 27 is driven by Tim Richmond. Cale Yarborough on the outside of Tim Richmond. Phil Parsons also in this group as they head toward turn number 3. This is the battle for second position now. Bill Elliott has the lead out in front of this group. They come off of turn number 4. The group involves Harry Gant, Terry Labonte, David Pearson, and the number 11 of Darrell Waltrip.
And as they race 2, 3, and 4 breaths, look at Elliott. It gives him an advantage. Right now, there are 3 or 4 cars times 3,700 pounds trying to race through air, and that's an advantage for the race leader, Bill Elliott, who continues to run right where he has since just before they crossed the start-finish line at the beginning of this race, way out front in the number 1 position. Look at the lead that Elliott has. That's almost unheard of, particularly in the early laps here at Michigan International.
Drafting is important here at Michigan, but not as important as it is on some of the other racetracks like Talladega and Daytona. We'll see a lot of it this afternoon, but it perhaps will not play as important a factor as it will on some of the other racetracks. Harry Gant turns off of corner number 4, brings it onto the tri-oval. Harry has moved himself into second spot. He's being trailed by Darrell Waltrip, Terry Labonte, and David Pearson. After that, it's Ricky Rudd, Rusty Wallace, and then that group of cars that contains Phil Parsons and Cale Yarborough, among others.
Harry Gant, he won the last ESPN televised race at Pocono. He has led something like the last 4 races on the trail and 5 of the last 6. Waltrip, of course, would like to do well. And there's that group of cars that's about, we say, approximately 6th through 20th, and somewhere in there, there he is in the middle of the screen. Look at Richard Petty on the outside, 4 wide, going down the backstretch into turn number 3. Petty has come from way back behind 20th position, and he has been roaring to the front like he was shot out of a cannon.
Richard Petty, who won his 200th career victory earlier this year at Daytona, is moving up through traffic now. In front of him is Ron Bouchard, but Petty has made a nice move here in the early going at Michigan. We've completed 7 laps now. Bill Elliott continues to hold the lead, but this gaggle of cars racing for 6th through about 15th position. Petty still on the high side of the racetrack. That apparently is his line for the early going here at Michigan. He's alongside Ron Bouchard now, passing him on the outside and continuing to flick off positions and move toward the front.
Petty started 22nd to be exact. Look who he's caught up with. Cale Yarborough. He's right now on the high side of the points leader, Dale Earnhardt. But Richard is really hooked up. Richard Petty is moving on the high side. We are accustomed to seeing him there, but boy, is he coming up through this field. Now, this team has recently left the Dygaard stable in regards to the engine construction. They were buying engines from Robert Yates and the Dygaard people until about 3-4 weeks ago, and they decided to terminate that arrangement. A little bit of ruffled feathers among both of the parties involved, but now the Petty Enterprises people are putting together their own engines. I'll tell you, whatever they did to the one they've inserted in this car today, it's working much better than it did during qualifying. Lots of trading of positions. Once again, I think we're going to go 4 abreast.
4 abreast down the backstretch. The car on the very inside of the racetrack is Dale Earnhardt. Tremendous racing here in Michigan as Cale Yarborough is the lead car in this pack and is running in 6th position. They move off of turn number 4 onto the tri-oval once again. And here's a car making a move into the pit area. That is the number 45 of Jeff Hooker from Valley City, Ohio. Jeff started this race in last position in 40th spot. He is bringing his car in for an early pit stop. We expect at least 3 pit stops in this going here this afternoon, and of course more depending upon the yellows. Richard Petty continues to move up. Right now running behind Ricky Rudd in car number 15. Right now Richard Petty is in 8th spot, and there is the leader, Bill Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia. Back with more live coverage from Michigan International Speedway in just a moment.
As we look at Bill Elliott in the lead, there's quite a story going on with Bobby Allison running way back in 23rd. He did not qualify well, so yesterday, all day long, they flogged the car, trying to make the chassis run better and better. By the end of the day, they were among the top 5. They got together in the motel room last night, though, and decided top 5 is not enough. They wanted to be right on top. So this morning, they went in the garage and they changed the whole chassis. Springs, shock absorbers, everything. And this is an untried, untested combination. Worse, if this thing doesn't work, they can't change it back to where they were before. The strategy here is go for a win. These guys want to be champion again in 1984, as they were in 1983. And they say the only way they can do that is to win. And they'd like to do just that here at Michigan.
Well, Dick, Bobby Allison is moving up very slowly. He has picked up another position. He's now up into 22nd spot, but not making the charge to the front that we had anticipated. And look at this. Phil Parsons in number 66 started second, has fallen way back to 24th position at this point.
Bill has qualified in the top 10 before. He had certainly hoped to be able to hold a little closer to the lead draft. Not only, Bob, as he dropped back over 20 positions, but he is losing contact with the first 20 cars in this race. Elliott still has the lead. Waltrip, incidentally, has cut into it just a little bit as we continue to watch Phil Parsons. There are the first 3 cars. You can see that Waltrip has cut into the lead a little bit. Terry Labonte runs in third. They're not really close at all. Those first three cars are all strung out, and Harry Gant is just about equal distance behind those first 3 cars. Then in 5th is David Pearson, and finally that batch of cars that was battling for 6th through 20th.
Positions being traded here among Ricky Rudd, Dale Earnhardt, and Ron Bouchard. From top to bottom on your screen is Dave Joyce in battle for position, following right behind Richard Petty.
Well, there you can see the 2 Wrangler cars of Dale Earnhardt and Ricky Rudd. They switched sides from a year ago, and now David Pearson comes into the pit area. David Pearson, who was running in 5th position. Pearson had qualified 4th fastest here today. It looked like he was in a position perhaps one of his finest in quite some time. It's been a while since David Pearson has won his last win coming at Darlington back in 1980.
And he is the winningest driver here at Michigan International. He has taken the checkered flag 9 times. But it looks like that his chances of winning here are going to be down the drain as the crew continues to work on that car. We go back to this battle here for 9th, 10th, and 11th position. This is the battle for 10th. It involves the number 15 of Ricky Rudd and Ron Bouchard on the inside.
Oh, Ron Bouchard there in the yellow and white blue number 47 was able to get one of the real key members of the Dyguard racing team over to his crew. And Bouchard hopes that will really help him out a lot.
Ron Bouchard, 35 years of age, driving the Race Hill Farms Buick. We had an opportunity to talk with Ron about his crew change earlier this weekend.
Ron, you seem on the threshold of some upcoming finishes and wins.
Well, this is true, Dick. We've had a lot of bad luck here all year, really, but, the cars performed well, and Wayne Bumgardner, our new crew chief, has really done a heck of a job the last 2 races, so maybe this race in Michigan could be the one.
We have had several crew chief changes since we visited with you last, and we'll tell you about those as the afternoon wears along. Meanwhile, we look toward the top, and it's Darrell Waltrip has moved in on Bill Elliott, and now Waltrip is looking to challenge for the lead as these cars streak down the backstretch. Darrell Waltrip moves to the inside of Bill Elliott and passes. We have now had 2 leaders in this race. Darrell Waltrip takes the lead on lap number 17.
And Waltrip right now has got to be feeling really good about what's happening. Not that Darrell hasn't won enough the past 3 years, but Waltrip has had a very difficult time, particularly on the super speedways in 1984. Matter of fact, both he and his teammate Neil Bonnet. Waltrip has only been dominant really a couple of times this year, and both of those times were on a track of different configuration than this, once at Richmond and once at Darlington. But Waltrip looks as racy as we have seen him all year on the super speedway.
There are your first 2 running in 3rd position now is Terry Labonte, and 4th is Harry Gant. We'll be back with more live coverage of this Champion Spark Plug 400, the 20th race on the Grand National Circuit for 1984. Back at Michigan, where a two-car battle has somehow become a three-car battle. Darrell Waltrip continues to lead, but now the battle is for second position. Terry Labonte and Bill Elliott run side by side down the backstretch into three. While we watch this, let's talk with the guy who started fourth in this race, but is out, David Pearson.
David, what happened to your car?
Well, the upper control arm mount on the frame where the upper control arm bolts onto it, it broke off. And, of course, that's something we can't understand. We never have seen one of them right before, you know, and so I guess it's just one of those things.
Now, the upper control arm mainly holds the steering together in the car. How tough was it to drive the car with that thing broken?
Well, I knew something was happening because I was more or less just riding, you know, right where I wanted to be. Everything was working real fine, and all at once, it just acted like something had broke, you know, and it was getting worse and worse than what it was doing. The A-frame was kept moving on in further and further, and of course it messed the front end up.
Well, the winningest driver here at Michigan is going to have to watch the rest of this event from the sidelines.
There's the battle for the lead. Darrell Waltrip, Bill Elliott, and Terry Labonte. Labonte once again challenging Bill Elliott in turn number 3. While we were away for break, we had a spin as Jeff Hooker tried to, it looked like, come into the pits, but lost control momentarily, but a great job of gathering that car in.
Bob, he really did. I thought he had it a couple of times and just kept going out of control repeatedly on him. You can see he's back up to speed. I thought perhaps his tire had gone down, but this is a young man from northern Ohio, northeastern Ohio, over in the Cleveland, Akron, Canton area, who Herb Nabb helped get into the race today, and a couple of anxious moments there. Up front, some anxious moments for Waltrip and Elliott as they go side by side once again down that flat backstretch at the Michigan International Speedway.
Waltrip with the advantage. Elliott settling back into second spot. Perhaps he'll try the slingshot off of the backstretch into turn number 3. He's not doing it this time, but Terry Labonte is as he challenges Bill Elliott for third spot. Running fourth is Harry Gant. In fifth position is Cale Yarborough. Sixth is Richard Petty, all the way from 22nd starting position. Seventh is Dale Earnhardt. Eighth is Ron Bouchard. Ninth is Ricky Rudd. And 10th is Benny Parsons. 11th is Jody Ridley. In 12th spot is Jeff Bodine. 13th is the number 2. And the 14th position belongs to number 7, Kyle Petty.
Now, this is an interesting trio up front. Bill Elliott normally doesn't charge, so you got an idea of how well Elliott feels today in terms of the mechanical performance of his race car. Labonte is always close to the front, but doesn't always lead a lot of laps, and we mentioned to you earlier that Waltrip just has not had that good of a year on the super speedways, but boy, he is really sailing here today, and he's flexed a lot of muscle. He was not content to ride behind Elliott. You know, it's certain for sure that the race is not going to be won before the first pit stop or even in the first 300 laps. And so when Darrell Waltrip is running up front and running this fast compared to the rest of the field early on, I can guarantee you that he feels as though he's in a very good position for the rest of this race.
Boy, there is a great battle there for second spot as Bill Elliott and Terry Labonte have been going at it real heavily for about the last 5 laps as they came off of turn number 4 last lap. Terry Labonte moved up in front of Bill Elliott to take over second spot, but as you can see, Elliott is back in that position. These are the first 3, Waltrip, Bill Elliott, and Terry Labonte. We've completed 25 laps out of 200 that will make up this Champion Spark Plug 400. Michigan International Speedway houses this beautiful 2-mile tri-oval, and during the year, the Indy cars run here twice, and the Grand National cars run here twice. We will have a telecast from here in September of the Indy cars. They put on a great show here and run well over 200 miles an hour. Top qualifying speed this weekend for the Grand National cars, a record 165.217 miles an hour. So once again, the battle is for second position as Terry Labonte moves down to the inside of Bill Elliott and tries to once again move into second spot. Back with more from Michigan after these messages. 28 laps have been completed, and up front, Darrell Waltrip, followed by Bill Elliott, and right behind him, Terry Labonte.
Well, before we went to the last commercial break, you were talking about the speed that was qualified here for top spots in qualifying this week. It was a very competitive field. Bill Elliott was about a half a second ahead of the second fastest qualifier, but the second through the 31st cars, repeat, second through 31, just 1 second on the clock separating. Highly competitive. It was a real difficult field, really, to qualify into. We started 40 cars. Over 50 entered the race, and in a couple minutes we'll run down for you. Some of the people were here and attempted to qualify and simply were not able to get up enough speed.
Jeff Bodine from Pleasant Garden, North Carolina, car number 5, continues to move up. He started this race in 12th position, and he has won twice this year on the Grand National Circuit.
Well, Jeff has got some problems here this afternoon, however. He's got something of an oil leak under the hood. The crew is really not sure the cause of Jeff Bodine's oil leak, and they hope it's going to be a minor problem. But these things seldom get better. They generally only get worse. At least for right now, the plan is to keep Bodine on the track, keep his foot flat on the throttle, and they hope this doesn't get to be a serious problem as the day wears on.
Well, Dick, we're watching Jeff Bodine, but you had talked about Bobby Allison earlier, and you told us that Allison, essentially, he and the crew rebuilt that race car. Now, are they in deep trouble for the rest of this race? Because they're obviously not fast early on here.
Well, Dick Bergeron will have comment on that just a little bit later, as Jeff Bodine, who started 12th, is continuing to run in 12th position. So the oiling problem that Dick mentioned isn't all that serious at the present time.
Well, back to that qualifying story as we watch Jeff Bodine struggling to stay up with the lead pack. He's doing right smartly, I might add. We're looking at 15th through 20th position. There's Lake Speed, Kyle Petty. Also in that group is Rob Bouchard. So these are all people who have been close to the front during the last month of the Grand National season. So a lot of people still in it. And also remember, there were about 20 cars on the lead lap most of the race at Talladega the last time, and 14 ended up crossing the finish line. Here's a partial list of some of the people who did not qualify. Don Paul, the son of a former super modified driver from nearby Berrien Springs, Michigan, was one of those who entered and just did not gender up enough speed to qualify. Grand National regular entrant J.D. McDuffie. H.B. Bailey, the man in gold and diamonds in his red and white number 36. The Alameda Auto Parts National Motors Pontiac is a non-qualifier. Bobby Gerhardt made the 10.5-hour drive from the Lebanon, Pennsylvania area in the Frederick Chevrolet. Really had very high hopes, had great expectations of being able to qualify for this race, and really was quite heartbroken when he did not get in. Del McCoward crashed attempting to qualify. Jim Hall, a former professional football player who has survived a bout with cancer, entered his first Grand National race ever, missed by about 2 seconds of qualifying. John Ingalls from Florida, Maurice Randall from nearby Charlotte, Michigan, and Dave Simcoe. They brought a brand new engine this week to qualify or attempt to qualify at his home Grand National track. He lives less than an hour away. They got 8 laps on it, and it blew up. And Simcoe had to be happy with running the ASA race last night at Berlin, Michigan.
Watching the 12th and 13th positions here, Lake Speed in car number 1 is running in 12th, and Ricky Rudd in number 15 is running in 13th spot. There's a good look at Lake Speed, who you remember qualified in 2nd position for the Pocono race that we telecast earlier this year. This week, Lake qualified for 20th starting position and has moved up 8 spots.
Lake has never won a Grand National stock car race, but it certainly looks like it's in the offing for him sometime in his career, and a lot of people think that it may happen very soon. Now we jump back up front to the first 3 guys just to give you some progress on that. Not much has changed. It's been Waltrip, Elliott, Labonte, not necessarily in that particular order every lap. Darrell has had the better of it for the last 10 or 15 laps. Remember that Elliott, with his brand new track record, led the first 10 laps or so. Since that time, Waltrip has stayed there in the vanguard, but he's been unable to shake both Elliott and Labonte. They may be waiting for that first pit stop, and maybe they can make a change that would once again make them superior.
34 laps have been completed, and we have been green all the way. Now, Jeff Hooker did momentarily get out of control at the pit entrance, but gathered the car in. It did not bring on the caution light, and the green has been out all the way so far. 2 leaders, Darrell Waltrip and Bill Elliott. At this point, only 1 car officially out of the race. That is David Pearson in car number 16.
Remember that fuel often is a big factor in Grand National stock car races. Bob mentioned earlier we expect about 3 pit stops on a routine basis to get in the vicinity of 100 miles per gallon of gasoline, which means that anytime after about lap 45, we would expect to see the routine or the scheduled pit stops of all the top drivers. Anybody who goes past lap 50 is getting just tremendous fuel mileage, and depending upon how the caution flags fly after about lap 3 or after about mile 300, they could be in a really good position for victory.
The average speed of the race after 35 laps is 156.63 miles an hour. They're the top three. We'll be back for more action in just a moment. Bob Jenkins, Larry Newber, and Dick Berggren back at Michigan International Speedway, where 37 out of 200 laps in the Champion Spark Plug 400 have been completed. The top five: Darrell Waltrip running first, Bill Elliott is second, Terry Labonte third, Cale Yarborough fourth, and running in fifth spot is Dale Earnhardt. Darrell Waltrip has won 3 times this year on the Winston Cup Grand National Circuit. We asked him about competing here at Michigan on the high bank.
Well, this track is the track that I haven't won a lot here. I've had one victory here over my career so far. But it's a track that I usually finish very well at. I usually have a good, strong second, third, fourth place finish here. And right now, with the point situation being the way it is, a good, strong run here and a good, strong finish would be almost as good as a win.
Well, he's making a good, strong win right here as he is leading at this point, although Bill Elliott now moves to the inside in turn number 1 and looks for an opportunity to go back in the lead, but cannot find it. Waltrip looking very good here. Darrell started in 11th, rather in 7th position, qualifying at 161 miles an hour, almost 4 miles an hour slower than the pole sitter Bill Elliott, but the car is performing well on race day.
This is the 20th race of the year, and Darrell almost won the point at this very racetrack a year ago. Now, you might say, how can you do that on race 20? Well, Bobby Allison dropped out, more than 30 cars finished, and Waltrip picked up 109 points on Allison a year ago here at Michigan International. There is one of the real nice stories of this week at the Michigan International Raceway. Look at that, 10th place for Jody Ridley. Now, if you're a regular on the Grand National Trail in terms of a fan, you know that Jody has struggled to get a ride. He had to put this entire program together himself for the 1984 season with the appropriately numbered 84. And Ridley has been struggling the last couple of years. He does have one career win. He's one of the few people who have graduated from late model racing over the past decade into Grand National stock car racing. And this is a very nice day to this point for Jody Ridley. He has had a top 10 finish. Matter of fact, a couple of them. He was 8th at Charlotte and 10th at Daytona earlier this year. But Jody Ridley right now, well, he's racing up there with all them legends of stock car racing.
It's been green all the way, and we've completed 40 laps. Tommy Ellis is making a pit stop. Dick Berggren, when can we expect the first regular series of pit stops to occur?
Well, Bob, anytime after about lap 45 or 50, you'll see them come in. But you also best believe that if there is a yellow flag anywhere between now and then, that everybody is going to come in for a load of fuel and a fresh set of tires. Now, if that first stop is on the caution, you'll see the majority of fast teams changing all 4 tires, taking on 2 cans of fuel. If it comes under the green, you're going to see them taking on the same 2 cans of fuel, but probably only 2 tires.
All right, Tommy Ellis has made his pit stop and is now back out there on the track. That was an interesting story at Talladega, as Tommy was among those who ran in that group of 15 cars or 11 cars that came down virtually side by side and nose to tail for the checkered flag.
Truly an incredible race, Bob, and really startling thing about it is you look at a Rusty Wallace or a Tommy Ellis or a Bobby Helen and think that they ran 500 miles at the world's fastest speedway. They were within 2 or 3 seconds of the winning car, and all they could get was 12, 13, 14 positions like that. Just truly an incredible race.
Bill Elliott has fallen from second spot back to third as Terry Labonte has moved into second spot. As Darrell Waltrip continues to lead, Waltrip has been in the lead since the 18th lap when he took over from Bill Elliott. 42 laps have been completed, so we are nearing the 1/4 mark of this 400-mile race.
Well, Darrell, despite not being quite as dominant, to say the least, as he has been in the 1982 and 83 seasons, is, or at least was, third in terms of the number of miles led in the 1984 season coming into this race. He had led 834 miles. The number 1 driver in terms of miles led was Cale Yarborough. So Waltrip's had a pretty decent year, to say the least. He has led a total of 11 races, but of course a lot of those races, the top drivers, they use strategy to lead at least a couple of laps to pick up the 5-point bonus that is given to the driver, or every driver who leads at least 1 lap in a race. So Waltrip is doing something that he did a lot of in the last 2 years, and he's been a little sporadic with leading miles this year, but boy, he sure does look strong here today.
There are the top three here on the tri-oval crossing the finish line, leading lap number 44. That's how close the first three are.
But they have been healthy, to say the least, when you compare them, Bob, to the rest of the field. They have been alone this whole race. Now, here's a pan back showing you where's fourth place. Where's it at? Where's it at? There it is. That group of cars right there, which includes Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, and the number 3 car of Dale Earnhardt. But the first three have built up almost a half a lap lead under this first green flag segment, which has been a long one. We've gone 44 laps now. Anything happened the last time here without a yellow flag? No interruptions.
You know, Larry, this race is very similar to the International Race of Champions event that was held here at Michigan yesterday. Normally, you get all 12 cars running nose to tail. However, as Bill Elliott comes into the pit, we'll pick up on that story a little bit later. Right now, let's go to Dick, who's in the Bill Elliott area.
Well, this looks like a routine pit stop. It is under the green flag, so the crew is now working on the right side tires. One can of fuel is in, and they're preparing to toss the second can of fuel in. Another crew member wipes the windshield. Only 5 men over the wall allowed. There was a time when in NASCAR a lot more used to go over, but now they say 5 and no more, and they're watching it like a hog.
All right, of course, the Fords don't get quite the gas mileage that the others do, and so Bill has been in earlier than the others.
Well, Dick, you know, even though only 5 people can be over the wall, actually there are up to 2 or 3 other crew members as some of the other pit stops begin who can participate in the pit stops. Is that not true? Well, apparently we've lost contact with Dick once again, but the fact of the matter is that there are 2 or 3 people who can, actually get right up on the wall as long as you're not over the wall, hand out drinks of water. See the one man there working on Phil Parsons' car, cleaning the windshield. Now, he doesn't count in that 5 that is over the wall. He's not among those numbered 5 that keep him well within the rules. He's doing some work, though, but he's not among those first 5.
Phil Parsons started second, has dropped back drastically in the first quarter of this race. He's pulling back out onto the racetrack, having made his first official stop. Phil was running well back of 20th position when he came in. 47 laps have been completed now. There are the 2 leaders now as Bill Elliott has come in. Darrell Waltrip in the lead and Terry Labonte running in second spot. To pick up on that International Race of Champions story that I was talking about, yesterday it didn't turn out to be quite as exciting as I think everybody had anticipated. There's Junior Johnson, Darrell Waltrip's crew chief and car owner. A couple of the cars got out into the lead and pulled away from the others, and that's exactly what we're seeing here this afternoon.
Well, a lot of different factors, of course, can figure into the eventual outcome or the rhythm of a race, but it's a bit unusual to see the field get so strung out at the Michigan International Speedway. But the point of the matter is, as we look at the second running, Terry Labonte come in, it's been a very fast pace. We have not had any yellow flags. There are still about 20 cars on the lead lap, so even though the racing has not been door handle to door handle, there are still one heck of a lot of folks in it for a potential victory here today. Second place running Terry Labonte. He's been second and third all day long. The Piedmont Airlines number 44. Dale Inman, the crew chief of this car, the crew chief who has won more Grand National stock car races than any other man in history. There is a driver who has won more Grand National stock car races in history. Most of those wins coming at the control and at the command of Dale Inman, his cousin. And there is Buddy Baker, yet another one of the legendary names coming from the deep south to those stock car races.
Others who are making pit stops include Dale Earnhardt, Kyle Petty, Joe Ruttman in number 98. Also, Greg Sachs is in, and one car did pull behind the pit wall on these stops. That was the number 97 of Dean Combs. There is Lake Speed in the Bullfrog Nitz car, as his crew has completed the work and is pushing him at least onto the apron, but it appears as if the car has stalled. Lake's trying to get the car restarted as the crew pushes him down the pit apron, but it doesn't look like they're having much success. Here is Benny Parsons, the winner at Atlanta earlier this year, coming in for a stop. The Copenhagen crew going to work on that machine. There's a good look at Benny Parsons, who will be joining us for a couple of races here in the broadcast booth as we present coverage of the late model sportsman and Darlington Dash race a little bit later in the season from Darlington, South Carolina. And Benny stands on the gas and broadslides the car as he pulls out of the pit.
And there's the leader, Darrell Waltrip. You see him pulling right by his teammate Neil Bonded, who is also in the pits. We'll take you down into the Junior Johnson, Jeff Hammond pit. Darrell Waltrip comes to a stop. They pick the right side up. Waltrip getting a drink to pause that refreshes, looking very casual about the whole thing, adjusting the radio, perhaps having a brief conversation with Jeff and/or Junior, and Waltrip is ready to pull away. His teammate Neil Bonnet actually beats him out of the pit road, but I think that Darrell was almost a full lap ahead, and there is Cale Yarborough, another one of the pre-race favorites. Right side rubber change on that as Yarborough picks up the pace as he comes out of the pit road and rumbles back under the 24-degree banking. The pit stops will really scramble the standings. You're going to see exactly how well every crew and driver in combination did getting their car into and out of the pits. And you know, Bob, there's a contest that goes on, the Ingersoll Rand Pit Crew Contest that goes on every race in the Grand National Race. And there's a lot of factors that go into a fast pit stop. A car may only be halted, say, 18 or 20 seconds, but what really counts is the amount of time the car spends off of the racetrack from the time it leaves turn number 4 and goes into turn number 1.
So pit stops have been made under green. We are 51 laps into the Champion Spark Plug 400. We'll resume our live coverage on ESPN in just a moment. Two-thirds of the Winston Cup Grand National Circuit completed in 1984 here are the point standings. Dale Earnhardt leading with 2,843 points, followed by Terry Labonte. Third is Bill Elliott. Fourth is Darrell Waltrip. And fifth is Harry Gant. In sixth place, Bobby Allison, the defending Winston Cup champion. Seventh is Neil Bonnet, who does not have a win this year. Jeff Bodine is eighth. Ricky Rudd is ninth. And Ron Bouchard is in 10th place. There is Bobby Allison, who has gone 4 laps further than anybody else, but finally makes the pit stop. He was shown as the leader until he came in, and now we are being told that Terry Labonte is back on the point.
And we watched Allison during that pit stop. They did not take the time to make any major chassis adjustments. I saw no one even go back into a rear window and jack weight around. The only thing I did notice was they were pounding on the rear spoiler. It looked like they were trying to push it up, maybe to put a little more drag on the rear end, Bobby perhaps complaining the car running a little loose, but no major adjustments or attempts at it during that pit stop.
And here is the leader, Terry Labonte, as he has gotten in and out of the pits faster than anybody else and is on the lead with Darrell Waltrip running in second spot. Running third unofficially is Bill Elliott. Fourth is Neil Bonnet, and fifth, Dale Earnhardt.
Bob, you know, you reflect back over the last 3 seasons in Grand National stock car racing, and this guy and team may not have won a lot of races, Terry Labonte, but when it comes to consistency and running in the top 5, nobody does it any better.
Jerry Nelson is the crew chief on the Bobby Allison car, and he's with Dick Bergman.
Jerry, how is the car working at this point?
Well, it's not as good as we were hoping, but it is within adjustment, we think. We did a little bit on that pit stop. We'll see how it runs and get some comments from Bobby, and we'll keep working at it, and hopefully we can get up there with the leader.
Now, you set this car up so that you were hoping to be able to pull this win off this afternoon. What are your feelings about the probability of winning here at this point?
Well, you can never count Bobby Allison or Dygard out. As long as we're on the racetrack, we're going to do our best to win the race. So we're just going to keep working on the car, trying to get it to handle a little better. It was a little bit on the loose side. Really just a matter of trying to pick up a little more speed and get up there with the leaders.
So it's going to be a busy afternoon in Bobby Allison's pit.
Well, when we were at Pocono, there was quite a bit of controversy surrounding Bobby Allison and the possibility of him carrying extra fuel in that car to allow him to get the better mileage. We asked him about that.
Well, first of all, we know the charges aren't directed at our team. We get good mileage, but NASCAR has taken our car apart numerous times and drilled holes in it and gone through all sorts of gyrations and threats and all that. And we've come up clean, which we intend to keep on doing. However, some of the teams that have complained, if you really check the records, have gone further than we have, and when they go to the gas pump, nobody's checked them.
And so the controversy continues. Charges being flung at Bobby Allison, and Bobby flings them right back.
Well, Bob, you know, it's an interesting story, this fuel controversy. It's funny how the prevailing attitude of thought has changed in the last month. About 3 or 4 weeks ago on the Grand National Trail, walk up and down pit road, and people were looking for hidden fuel. Now this weekend and walking around, the teams seem to have a different attitude as we go back and look at the race for second position between Waltrip and Bill Elliott. people are discovering that once they have concentrated on trying to stretch their fuel mileage, they are even finding more miles per gallon in their own race cars. And 2 or 3 of the top teams and top drivers said, you know, we really think that perhaps we haven't done as much or hadn't done as much homework as we should have until about the midpoint of the season when 2 or 3 of the other teams are kind of blazing the trail for us. The prevailing attitude has changed. Most of the teams now think they got to work harder, that the other teams have simply found something more than they had. The other teams most commonly mentioned as having superiority in the fuel consumption race. Cale Yarborough in the number 28 car hooked up by Waddell Wilson, number 33 car of Travis Carter and Harry Gannon, and of course, Bobby Allison.
So with nearly 60 laps completed, we'll run down as many as we can. We know there are those of you who like to keep score as you watch these races. The leader is Terry Labonte, second is Darrell Waltrip, third is Bill Elliott, fourth is Neil Bonnet, and fifth is Lake Speed. Running in sixth spot is Dale Earnhardt, seventh position is Cale Yarborough, 8th is Dave Marcus, 9th Richard Petty, and 10th is Harry Gant. Running in 11th spot is Benny Parsons, 12th position is Buddy Baker, 13th is Ron Bouchard, 14th is Jody Ridley, 15th Jeff Bodine, 16th is Bobby Allison, 17th is Rusty Wallace, 18th spot is Ricky Rudd, and in 19th is Tim Richmond. Junior Johnson continues to watch his drivers on the track, Darrell Waltrip and Neil Bonnet. Darrell Waltrip in second spot as this race with third place Bill Elliott is continuing. 61 laps now completed. ESPN and Nascar present a track back. This copper wire that runs from the carburetor to the engine block may look like just any copper wire, but really it seals the carburetor to the engine. During pre-race inspection, the NASCAR officials will check the carburetor to make sure that it meets all specifications. When it does, it's sealed on. Now you can take off the ends of the carburetor here and adjust and change the jets to allow more fuel into the carburetor, but once the carburetor is on itself, it's sealed on. Average speed of the race is 154.61. We continue under green at Michigan. More live coverage in just a moment. Well, here's a review of the all-time winners in Winston Cup competition. Richard Petty with his 200th earlier this year at Daytona. Second on the all-time win list is David Pearson, who is already out of this race. Bobby Allison and Cale Yarborough each have 81 victories, and Darrell Waltrip is fifth with 60 wins. And as far as who's going to win this one, well, it's still very much up in the air as only 64 laps have been completed, but at this point, Terry Labonte is the leader with Waltrip and Bill Elliott running second and third, and then Dale Earnhardt and Cale Yarborough. We're on the high banks of Michigan International Speedway. They're on the backstretch right now where the banking is just very slight. However, as they go to turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, they move up to 18 degrees of banking. There is the battle for second and third position. Well, earlier this year, there was an IndyCar race here and a lot of accidents. The most, at least terrible-looking accident involved Chip Ganassi. However, he was injured very slightly. As a matter of fact, was out of the hospital within a week. We are delighted to see Chip here this afternoon watching the Grand National cars. Here's Dick Berggren.
Chip, how are you feeling?
Good. I'm still in one piece, Dick. My doctor said hopefully I'll be back on the track sometime around Labor Day, hopefully.
So what exactly happened to your car in that accident?
Well, we're really not sure yet. I think something broke in the left rear. Either that or I just lost it over going on the exit of turn 2.
What are your feelings about returning to racing? Are you anxious to get going again?
I'm very anxious. Very anxious. I'm just sitting it out here. I have a little bit of swelling on my head yet, and the doctor said anytime after Pocono, I'll be able to take a test to come back and drive. So it should be Labor Day weekend, I'm hoping. Don't make any promises, but maybe Labor Day at Mid-Ohio.
How do you feel about the track here in Michigan? A lot has been said.
I'll tell you, if I knew more about my crash, I would know more about what caused it. As far as I think our cars, I think we can live with it, live with the track the way it is. But sometime in the future, they're going to have to do something about the bumps as far as our cars are concerned. When, I don't know.
Chip Ganassi, very lucky man to be standing here watching this race today.
Well, we'll have the old Milwaukee car back out pretty soon, I'm sure. The Indy car, that is. But here today, we're just here to cheer Tim Richmond on.
Okay.
All right. Everybody's a PR man, you know. But it's great, and it really has made racing great.
Yeah, it really has. Well, look at this. As Terry Labonte laps Tim Richmond, who Chip just mentioned. Unfortunately, Tim goes a lap down to the field, and Tim Richmond continues to struggle.
Well, for Tim Richmond, it's been a pretty tough year, as a matter of fact. They had one race this year where they were somewhat of a surprise winner. They popped up and won the race after making just a perfect tire selection on a very late caution flag. But Richmond has been a little frustrated with what's been happening in the 1984 season, and there are those who will tell you that he's looking around, that maybe he won't come back to Grand National racing next year, that he may well even be in a different type of race car. Remember that Tim was a graduate of super modified racing, one of the very few people to come out of that type of racing to go big time. Also spent a considerable amount of time in USAC sprint cars before moving to the Grand National circuit.
Well, as Dick and Chip Ganassi indicated, there was a lot of controversy here after the Michigan 500 concerning the condition of the racetrack. Some say it's a little too bumpy for high speed. Here's Larry Newber.
Here on the backstretch at Michigan International are the remnants of the last race they conducted here. The Indianapolis cars raced in the high banks, and they crashed here. We found these pieces. Chip Ganassi crashed at this spot, top of one of the liquid containers that sits in the front nose of an Indy car, part of the red fiberglass from the exterior of Chip's car, and actual part of the chassis here. You can see the honeycomb structure of the carbon fiber, which makes up the interior of the race car. Those pieces and all the crashes brought more focus to the racetrack, which was already a part of the driver's attention. The NASCAR drivers were a little critical of it the last time here. The IndyCar drivers, very critical. But you can see a lot of repairs had to be made to this track before today's race. This upright piece of railroad tie, brand new. The Armco here on the inside, also replaced. They also had to do some work on the outside wall. Here is where Pancho Carter punched the outside retaining wall at better than 200 miles per hour. Steel girder supporting that wall embedded in the ground in cement, and more corrugated steel. All of it had to be repaired. Despite all the conversation, the track has not really been a serious problem, particularly for the Grand National drivers. Oh, there are these cracks in the surface that have the sticky substance in between, but the ones that really concern the drivers are the ones that run parallel to the flow of traffic. Now, even those have not been a problem, but it's like casual water on a golf course. Just something else, another factor, something you have to be aware of.
Well, there has been no problem whatsoever with the track here this afternoon, as we have been green all the way. 70 laps have been completed. We have 130 to go, with Terry Labonte still in the lead. And there he is, car number 44. Terry in the Piedmont Airlines Chevrolet finished fourth in this race here last year.
Well, just a couple more comments, and we'll put a period on this track story as we watch Benny Parsons making his way around. Watch the line that Benny Parsons takes. That's an alternative to getting around the Michigan International Speedway, but a lot of man-made work went into the engineering feat of putting together this high-bank racetrack, and the winters are very severe here in the southern part of the southern peninsula of Michigan. There you see Benny in that next-to-the-wall line, and it is a tough job to maintain a paved racetrack even with 10 or 15-degree banking. The 24-degree bank make it a very tall order. By and large, this racetrack has held up very well. There's one other thing about the Michigan International Speedway that absolutely nobody can challenge. It is perhaps one of the single finest spectator in-person viewing racetracks in the entire world. You can see this 2-mile racetrack all the way around, and every seat in the house is a good one. If you've never been in person to a Grand National stock car race and you live north of the Mason-Dixon, this wouldn't be a bad place to take in your first race. You can really see the Speedway.
By the way, we have radio communication with Benny Parson and with Cale Yarborough, and we'll utilize that during a yellow, as there's Cale Yarborough running in front of Richard Petty. However, we do not converse with the drivers during green, which we have been all the way, because we don't want to bother them in their job. By the way, Cale Yarborough was the winner yesterday of the overall International Race of Champions, and picked up $150,000 for his efforts. Talking about the racetrack, it was completely resurfaced back in 1977 under the auspices of Clarence Cagle, who had just left the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So this surface is about 7 years old and really is holding up rather well, although as Chip indicated, sometime in the near future, there probably will have to be some repaving done at portions on the track.
Bob, you mentioned IROC. I would really like to cite the job that Neil Bonnet did yesterday. Neil won the race, but he also, in effect, won the points championship in that $150,000 for Cale Yarborough. You know the cars were prepared with an effort to make them as equal as possible. We're talking about the IROC series of yesterday. But what happened in the race yesterday is that Yarborough got the early lead and Bonnet tucked right in behind him. And for 45 flawless, perfect laps, Neil Bonnet, hooked up in a train behind Yarborough, showed tremendous patience and an ability to stay right on Yarborough's back bumper, never once disrupting the draft that they were slicing through the southern Michigan Irish Hills air with. And Bonnet, because of his efforts, was able to push Cale Yarborough away from the rest of the field. Bonnet did an almost perfect job. No, you know something, I might give that some reconsideration and call it a perfect job, because on top of everything else, he passed Cale on the final lap and won the race.
This is the battle for 4th, 5th, and 6th position, and here is the leader, Terry Labonte, putting a lap on the number 15 of Ricky Rudd. So we've had 3 different leaders in this race: Bill Elliott, Darrell Waltrip, and Terry Labonte. Right now, Terry is in the lead. It's going to be some kind of autumn on ESPN as we present live college football, and we'll begin on September 1st with a big doubleheader. First, Western Athletic Conference champion Brigham Young travels to Pittsburgh. Then, the University of Florida Gators meet the national champion Miami Hurricanes. It all begins Saturday, September 1st at 3:30 Eastern Time.
Florida, of course, will also be trying to duplicate what it did a year ago when it defeated Miami. The only loss for the eventual national champion Miami Hurricanes, as we look at the tremendous crowd that's on hand here at the Michigan International Speedway. Miami is one of the most exciting teams in college football with that young, this year, sophomore quarterback, Bernie Kosar, one of those people that Earl Bruce and Woody Hayes let get away. Kosar is from Ohio, but playing college football deep in the heart of Dixie, down way south in Miami.
I'd also like to remind you that perhaps one of the biggest weekends in auto racing during the summer, the Southern 500, Labor Day weekend, we will have live coverage here on ESPN. I will be in Darlington that particular weekend, and Larry will also have coverage of a race that day at Mid-Ohio, an IndyCar race. Tommy Ellis has come into the pits again. Remember, he was the first in on the first series of stops, and so perhaps this indicates that in a few more laps, the others will come in for their second stop of the afternoon.
Yeah, we had a report that they changed the rear end gear on the Morgan McClure number 4 just before the race. By the way, this is a former A.J. Foyt racing machine. That's where the color orange came from, so the heritage is pure. They changed the rear end gear on the number 4 car before the race began, and it may have thrown him off on their mileage, but he is definitely out of phase, and it does not look like he's going to be able to make this entire race on only 3 stops, because he stopped at laps 40 and lap 77 for fuel.
And Tommy Ellis has just been lapped by second and third position, Darrell Waltrip and Bill Elliott. They continue to run together on the racetrack, and a few car lengths ahead of them is the leader of the race, Terry Labonte.
Well, I'll tell you, when you have so many green flags in a race, it really plays into the hands of 2 or 3 teams that happen to have the superior setup. There's Darrell Waltrip. Again, he's running in second place right now. Waltrip and Labonte and Elliott, boy, they're really getting the advantage here because we've gone green. There's been no yellow. No opportunity for the field to bunch up. If you're a new viewer of Grand National stock car racing, whenever there is an incident on the track, it can be an accident or a spin or maybe just some debris, the yellow flag comes out for safety reasons. Now, the field will race all the way around to the track to the start-finish line, but once they get to the finish line, when the yellow is displayed, you slow down and you get in line, single file. The field bunches up, and you may have had as much of a 3/4 lap on the rest of the field, but once the yellow flies, that is all out the window. Everybody else gets a reprieve. That hasn't happened once so far today.
Well, Tommy Ellis has just made an unscheduled pit stop. They say that the car is very loose. They changed outside tires trying to tighten the thing up. This is kind of a strange car. The body came from A.J. Foyt's Grand National car, but the chassis is a Mike Laughlin car, so it's not really a whole anything.
Yeah, the front clip on that car, the Laughlin front clip, one of the more popular designers, engineers, and builders of Grand National cars. So it is very much a hybrid, although it performed very well, as we mentioned earlier in this broadcast, at Talladega, the last race on the trail.
80 laps completed, the average speed 154.83 miles an hour. And really the interval between second and third position here is better measured in car lengths rather than time. We got them about 78/100ths of a second between first and second, but it's more like 12 or 15 car lengths. There are 18 cars, make that 13 cars, still on the lead lap as we have about 119 laps to go in this one.
You know, some of the teams, most notably Bobby Allison, is experimenting with the use of computer readouts for making all those value judgment and strategic calls and decisions you have to make during running the race. But when something like this happens, we have now completed 80 of 200 scheduled laps without a yellow flag. All past records are just out the window. Now you've got to start thinking about, hey, if I've been pacing myself, let's think about Cale Yarborough, for instance. Do I have to kick it up? Do I have to get going? And as we're talking, by the way, Tommy Ellis continues to be plagued with problems as he comes back to the pit for yet another time. But I'm thinking about Yarborough. I'm thinking about Richard Petty and all the speed that he displayed early on. Maybe these guys have to change their strategy if their strategy has been just stay on the lead lap and keep the leaders within sight. Because right now, those two guys you're looking at right now, Waltrip in white, Elliott in red, and Labonte in blue, who's ahead of them, is really knocking this field down. And if you've got anything left that you've been saving, I guess you're going to have to show it now earlier than you may have planned.
Well, we are looking for a track record here, and right now they are at record-breaking speed. The race record is held by David Pearson, set back in 1973 at 153.485 miles an hour, and right now the average speed is 154.83. 13 cars on the lead lap, and we will review those in just a moment. Well, it's rather interesting, the attire and especially the shoe wear that these drivers have on when they're in their race cars.
Avenue would have us believe that you can tell the measure of a man or a woman by the clothes they wear. You know, with a race driver, you can't do that. They wear uniforms, every one of them, and they all look the same. But we think that you can tell something about them by the shoes that they wear. Can you identify, for instance, who is the man in the cowboy boots with the Space Shuttle reentry tiles on the heel? How about the term loafer? Guarantee you that it doesn't refer to this man's driving style. And who belongs to the Ivy League hush puppy? As a hint, he is not a New Englander. Then there's the more formal after-dinner look, wingtips. And who dons the basic black working man shoe? Probably some hard-working independent soul, of course. And then here's the shoe of the consummate race driver, PR man, strictly regulation issue. And who bears all, showing the way that any true red-blooded stalker really would like to be racing. We'll be back with all these answers and more after these few words.
This Olympic update is being brought to you by Toshiba.
Be embarrassed if you didn't recognize the cowboy boots from the Space Age tiles, the King, Richard Petty. The well-worn loafers, number 2 on the all-time win list, David Pearson. The hush puppies. Since 1971, Jimmy Means has been racing in those, well, not exactly those shoes. And the semi-formal man, the wingtips, there's Dave Larkin. And the hard-working man in the basic Union label black, Buddy Arrington. Remember the Simpson specials, that thoroughly professional? Cale Yarborough, pensive on this day. And who bared all to show how any true red-blooded stock car racer really wants to drive? Why, there he is, old Dick Brooks himself.
Well, it's quite different from the IndyCar drivers who wear the special fireproof shoes. These guys wear what they brung, I should say.
And I have it on very good authority, by the way, that Dick Brooks always does wear shoes during the races. And about practice, I don't know. Just kidding, Dick, just kidding.
They're the top 5. Labonte, Waltrip, Elliott, Yarborough, and Richard Petty. Jeff Bodine in car number 5 is beginning to show some smoke. He is running in 13th position and is coming into the pit area. So Jeff Bodine may have a serious problem with this car. See what the crew does as he pulls to a stop.
Bodine has led 5 of the last 6 races, including 327 laps at the recent Nashville race, and there is Ricky Rudd. Boy, have they had a struggle for the last 2 months. The early part of this season, the first 4 or 5 races. This was the guy to beat. He was up front every race, it seemed like. But for the last couple of months, it has just been a real uphill climb. Now, Rudd had pitted on lap 46. He comes in again on lap number 89. So if he's coming in for fuel, he's in trouble in that category. But I have a feeling they've got more problems than that, Bob. They're very unhappy, I'm certain, with the chassis performance of that machine.
Running in 15th spot, a lap down to the field. Terry Labonte is continuing to set the pace here, and should Labonte win today, it will be his 4th Grand National victory. His most recent came at Riverside International Raceway in California in June of this year. There is the crew that has raised up the hood on the Jeff Bodine machine. It goes down off the jacks on the left side, but work is continuing in the engine department.
Now, Jeff is currently 8th in the point standings, 9th in terms of dollars won, despite the fact that he's not yet on the Winner's Circle program. Wasn't until 1984, that is to say. He's won over $200,000. This racetrack also has been relatively kind to Jeff Bodine in his brief year. He's got a 4th place here, but he will not pick up a number 4 position here today.
Less than a second interval between 1st and 2nd spot. Darrell Waltrip continuing to run 2nd. Let's run down the cars that are running on the lead lap, and there are now 11. Labonte, Waltrip, Bill Elliott, Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, Benny Parsons, Harry Gant, Buddy Baker, Jody Ridley, and Ron Bouchard. Those 11 cars are on the lead lap. Running in 12th spot is Bobby Allison. 13th, Jeff Bodine until he made the pit stop. Then Rusty Wallace, Ricky Rudd, Tim Richmond, Kyle Petty, Neil Bonnet, Blake Speed, and Dave Marcus.
And while you were reading down that list, Bob, this guy right here, that blue and white flash, number 44, Labonte, put a lap on Ron Bouchard. So Bouchard is now 1 lap down as we go down to the pit area and look at Bodine. There goes Jeff Bodine pulling out. And there is Bobby Allison at work at another end of pit road. Bobby Allison comes in on lap number 92. He had gone 54 laps before, so I think that they are working on that car, Bob. They're obviously very unhappy with the way it's handling. A lot of extra time now being spent under the left side of the car as the car continues hoisted up in the air, the left side up, the fuel long since replenished, and Allison goes back into the fray. But his hopes for a repeat championship are beginning to get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer with each passing race.
Well, he's usually thought of as the last to come in during the routine stops, but this time among the first. Bobby Allison back out there. Phil Parsons now comes in, the number 66 Gold Bandit machine. Phil started 2nd in this race, but has dropped back, in fact, dropped back in the first few laps and is now out of the top 20. You can see the crew adjusting some weight. The crew member who is at the rear of the car on the right side is adjusting some weight there at the rear of the car, trying to make that machine handle better.
Couldn't tell if it's going clockwise or counterclockwise. If it was going clockwise, it was putting weight into the car. Bill was obviously saying it was a little too loose, and that was indeed the case. We couldn't get quite close enough to tell what he was doing. Well, battling for 6th and 7th at this point, car number 55, Benny Parsons, and car number 3, Dale Earnhardt. Benny has a win this year. Earnhardt won that terribly exciting race at Talladega. So a couple of the winners of the 1984 Trail battling it out for 6th and 7th position. Right now, Parsons, who's been running that extra special high line, although look where Earnhardt's at, right up behind Benny now, going at it.
Benny Parsons from Ellerbe, North Carolina. One of those who participated in the IROC race here yesterday and who had a mathematical chance of winning, but he did not. As we indicated earlier, Cale Yarborough won the overall IROC championship here yesterday. Benny Parsons, who won earlier this year at Atlanta International Raceway, as we see that Rusty Wallace has developed a problem on the track and is slowing on the backstretch.
Now, Rusty would have liked to have done well at this place a little more than a lot of the other races on the trail, because a lot of the folks who spent a number of years watching Rusty win ASA races are from right here in southern Michigan. Rusty Wallace raced here as an ASA driver. He also raced here as a USAC stock car driver. The first half of the season was very disappointing for Wallace, but he's been coming on a little stronger of late.
Rusty Wallace, the leader in the current champion Sparkplug Rookie of the Year standings with 178 points. Phil Parsons, who we saw come into the pits just a couple laps ago, is second with 165. Clark Dwyer third, Greg Sachs fourth, and Tommy Ellis fifth. And although those points are important, they really do not determine the champion at the end of the season, but rather a vote among the NASCAR officials determines who will be the Rookie of the Year. Rusty Wallace pulls behind the pit wall as Bill Elliott comes in for a routine stop. Crew working on the right side of that car, jacking the car up and changing tires on the right side as fuel is being put into the car on the left rear. You see the crew member washing off the windshield for Bill, giving him clearer vision, and he is away in a good pit stop for Bill Elliott.
You saw the graphic on the rookies before we tuned into Bill Elliott's pit stop. Boy, what a rotten day it has been for the rookie contenders. None of them, with the exception of Greg Sachs, has been having any luck whatsoever, and Sachs has not been what you would call competitive.
Jeff Bodine was in. The crew raised the hood on the car, made an adjustment. He's back out there. What's the story, Dick?
Well, unfortunately, Bob, they didn't like very much what they saw. They thought at first they had an oil leak when the race first began, but now they've decided that it's an internal engine problem. And about all they were able to do was to run a bunch of tape around the breathers for the engine. They think maybe they've got a blown piston. If so, Jeff probably won't run much more today.
So that's the story on Jeff Bodine as we focus in once again on the leader of the race, Terry Labonte. We are nearing the halfway point. When Terry comes around this time and crosses the finish line, it will complete 98 laps. So 2 more and we'll be halfway. And there is the interval between first and second. Darrell Waltrip is pursuing right behind Terry Labonte. Now the third place car, Bill Elliott, is not in there at this point because he has already made the pit stop. Buddy Baker is in for a stop. He is running in the top 10. As a matter of fact, in 10th position. Crew changing the rubber on the left side of that car.
Lots of conversation about the future status of this team, driver, and the Woods brothers, who, of course, field this race car. Often mentioned in the conversation, and we can confirm that one of the potential options for the 1985 season for the Wood brothers is Kyle Petty. I repeat, at this point, it is just one of the options. Buddy Baker still has the ride, although there has been a considerable amount of talk as to where Buddy might be headed. There's a possibility that one or two of the other Grand National drivers may be leaving the circuit. Baker might have an opportunity to move into one of the established Star Team cars for the 1985 season, should his relationship with the Wood brothers end.
We anticipate a stop by Terry Labonte momentarily. And when he comes around this time, it will be half through. Here comes Richard Petty in for his stop. And amazingly, Larry, the speeds are high. The competition is great, and no yellows to this point.
No yellows and a very small amount of attrition. We talked about Jeff Bodine's problem, but really we only had about 3 or 4 cars who have given the appearance of dropping out of this race, and the majority of the front runners have stayed in. And there is the front runner of them all, Terry Labonte.
Labonte is in. By the way, Jeff Bodine is in for another stop. We'll continue to watch that as you watch Terry Labonte and hear from Dick Berggren.
Well, he's going to put on at least left side tires. They got 1 can of fuel in there in the process of cleaning out the windshield. This is certainly a routine stop. He did go 52 laps between fuel, so that's 108 miles, so that's pretty good. And Labonte is on his way.
Yeah, Dick, it's a 15.1-second pit stop, and up the other direction in the pit area, Cale Yarborough has come in. Dale Earnhardt is also in. So pit stops are being made here. The second routine stop of the afternoon. There's the work by Waddell Wilson and the crew on the Hardy Chevrolet with Cale Yarborough in the cockpit. And the crew signaling that he's ready to go. Cale pulls out. Work still being done on Dale Earnhardt's car. Now the jacks are down. The fuel is in the car. He pulls out. Benny Parsons comes in. He's looking rather relaxed in that Copenhagen Chevrolet. A drink being put into Benny. He takes it. The crew working on the left side rubber. Jacks are down. And Benny Parsons is very slowly away. Has he killed that car?
Boy, it certainly has not fired. Just some anxious moments here for the Cope crew as they're struggling, working, laboring down pit road, and finally it fires off, and Benny Parsons accelerates rather gingerly as we look at another one of the leaders coming in. This is Waltrip.
So Junior Johnson and crew now will work on the Darrell Waltrip car. He passes his teammate Neil Bonnet, who is just now pulling out of the pit. There's Neil flashing by as Darrell sits patiently in the pits with the crew going to work on the left side.
Port side up, water glass coming out of the starboard side as the fuel was not completely emptied into the tank yet, but Waltrip is ready to go as soon as that car drops down to the ground.
Just past the halfway point at the Champion Spark Plug 400, the positions have changed because of the pit stop. We'll sort it all out and tell you what's going on in just a moment from Michigan. Awfully small tent that about 20 guys came out of, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't want to say anything, Bob, but they measured 6 by 6 on the outside, and they were all wrinkled when they were coming out. So I don't know what that means.
We are at Michigan International Speedway near Brooklyn, Michigan for the Champion Spark Plug 400. We're delighted you could join us today for our live coverage. At the end of 107 laps, here are the top 5. Terry Labonte is the leader, Darrell Waltrip running second, Bill Elliott is third, Benny Parsons fourth, and Cale Yarborough is running in fifth position. We have had 4 different leaders in this race. Bill Elliott led laps 1 through 17. Then Darrell Waltrip led 18 through 49. Terry Labonte 54 through 99. Darrell Waltrip led laps 100 through 101. Cale Yarborough led 1 lap, 102, then came in for a stop, giving the lead back to this guy, Terry Labonte, who remains in the lead. Now, we have had no yellow lights in this race. We have had no yellows. We've been green all the way, not even a slight spin, although Jeff Hooker did lose control of the car momentarily, but not enough to bring out a yellow.
Can you be leisure at 160 miles per hour? It may look like it on the television set at home, but believe me, you're talking about the best professional race drivers in terms of stock cars in the entire world, and they're making it look easy. This is not an easy thing to do, to maintain this type of pace all day long without any breather at all. And it may look like things are going easy on your screen at home, but these guys are performing just to the peak of their ability, and it really is a tremendous race when you think about the skill involved here and the fact we've been able to go this distance and nothing has gone wrong.
Bobby Hillen Jr. is in car number 8 there, trailing Terry Labonte. And that's the guy that we can say we raced against, Larry, because Bobby was one of those who were at a local go-kart track up here Friday evening, and we competed against him. But Bobby Hillen now has Jake Elder as his crew chief, and both driver and crew chief hoping for big things.
Bobby is the youngest man in this race. At the age of 20, he tied Clark Dwyer, who has retired since this race began, for that laurel, the youngest man in the race, and he really has shown a great deal of promise. One of his finest performances took place last week at Talladega, but he's had a nice, solid season, and looks like he has a nice career ahead of him.
90 laps to go at the Champion Spark Plug 400 in Michigan. There is Buddy Baker in car number 21. Driving for the Woods brothers. We discussed a little bit earlier the possibility of him not being with the crew next year, and he had this to say about that situation.
let me just put it this way. We've got the 84 season to finish out. I've got quite a few races with them to do right now, and they've been super to me. We split company at the end of the year. I've done that with many racing teams before. I've always managed to leave with them being my friends, and you know, it's sometimes better if you're not really doing the job that you feel like you can, or if they feel like they're not doing the job. You know, sometimes the change is good all the way around. It's just a situation we'll have to wait and see. As far as I'm concerned, I can wait till later in the year to find out what I'm going to do, because I'm more interested in winning races for the Wood Brothers right now, and that's it.
That's a story we may develop further when we bring you live coverage of the Southern 500 Labor Day weekend here on ESPN.
Buddy is number 7 on the win list among the active drivers for all-time wins. He has won here at the Michigan International Speedway, and he has picked up more than $2.6 million in his career.
So Terry Labonte, formerly from Corpus Christi, Texas, now leads the Champions Spark Plug 400. We are back at Michigan International Speedway. The top 5 with 113 laps completed. Terry Labonte, Darrell Waltrip, Bill Elliott, Cale Yarborough, and Harry Gant. And that's just a little bit of the crowd in the infield here on this tremendous afternoon of racing. Well, there is competition on the racetrack. There is also competition down in the pit area as the crews battle each other when these cars come in. Let's get a report on the pit stop competition from Dick Berggren.
And the leader of the pit stop competition so far, at least for the season, is number 28, Juan L. Wilson's team, Cale Yarborough, the driver. Second in the series-long competition is Ernie Elliott, crew chiefing for his brother Bill. So far here, however, Darrell Waltrip's guy, Jeff Hammond, has gotten him out most quickly. Now, the thing that makes this particular competition so interesting is that the money goes to the crew members rather than to the drivers. Now, sure, the driver has to have something to do with all this. The timing is from the time that the guy gets into the pit area until the time he leaves. But still, the majority of the hard work, the majority of the energy, is the men on pit road that sweat all day. They are very, very interested in this competition.
And, well, they might be, Dick. You mentioned the top 2 as far as the year-long standing are concerned, Yarborough and Bill Elliott. Third is the Bobby Allison crew, then 4th, Benny Parsons, 5th, Harry Gant, 6th, Buddy Baker, 7th, David Pearson, 8th, Jeff Woodine, 9th, Darrell Waltrip, and 10th in the Ingersoll-Rand pit crew standing, the crew of Richard Petty.
Emphasis is placed on finishing the race. Points are only awarded to a car and a crew that finished the race. Then they add up the least total time, and the points are awarded in descending order. That's where the points come from. Incidentally, Dale Inman, who crew chiefs Guess Who, the leading car right now, Terry Labonte, has won this competition 3 times since its inception back in 1979. The other winners were Doug Richard and Ernie Elliott. Seems like we heard that name also a couple minutes ago in regard to this competition.
6 cars are on the lead lap. In 6th spot is Richard Petty. 7th, a lap down is Dale Earnhardt, then Buddy Baker and Jody Ridley. And we continue to go green. Can we run this entire 200-lap, 400-mile race without a yellow? Well, it'll be pretty unusual, but it is possible.
Yeah, it is possible. And the way things are going today and the way things have been going this weekend, you begin to look at that as a possibility. And nobody is really showing anything here in the last 20 or 30 laps that they hadn't shown early on. It's still Labonte, Waltrip, and Elliott. As a matter of fact, Labonte and Waltrip have spaced themselves ahead of Bill Elliott. Everybody thought that because Elliott was so fast in qualifying here that unless he had car problems, if he did not win the race, he would at least be the dominant factor. But it hasn't been that way so far.
And it hasn't been a good day for Jeff Bodine, who has pulled behind a wall. The crew is going to further examine the problems that have plagued Jeff Bodine all day. It was diagnosed as a oil leak of some type, and he is now in the garage area behind the pit wall, and the crew is going to take a closer examination of the problem. Once again, the top 3 with 118 laps completed. Terry, Darrell, and Bill will be right back. Michigan International Speedway near Jackson, Michigan. We're located about 14 miles south of Jackson, Michigan, right along U.S. Highway 12 at Michigan International Speedway, a 2-mile high-bank tri-oval. And in the Champions Spark Plug 400 that we're covering for you live on ESPN today, Terry Labonte looks for his 4th Grand National victory of his career. He is leading Darrell Waltrip, Bill Elliott, Cale Yarborough, and Harry Gant.
Really is a real good racing area, too, as a matter of fact, around here, Bob. A lot of the drivers who raced in southern Michigan on the short track, super modified sprint cars have become truly legendary. Among the products, by the way, of the southern Michigan racing is Joe Ruttman. I know a lot of people think that Joe came from California, but actually he started his driving career in 1970, not too far from here, running in places like Mount Clemens, Michigan, Flat Rock, Michigan, and in my hometown of Toledo, Ohio. Joe started in 1970 when he lived here in the Detroit area.
And Dick Bergeron has a further comment on Joe Ruttman.
Well, Larry, Joe is one of those drivers whose future is up in the air for 1985. He's rather looking around to see what's going to happen. Yesterday, he had a real bad break for this race where he wants to look so well. Late in the afternoon, in the very last practice, he had a very serious engine fire. One of the bolts came out of the carburetor. Lots and lots of gas got on the engine, and when they pulled up the hood, it was an absolute inferno. So they worked pretty feverishly just to try to get the car back in the race. Joe desperately wants a strong finish here.
He's also had a very interesting career. Some of the things he has done, for instance, he owns a late model track record at the Phoenix International Speedway of 133 miles per hour. Now, that's an average speed on a 1-mile track in the late model. At the time when he said it, he broke all of the existing records for super modified sprint cars. Wasn't as fast as the IndyCar record, but interestingly enough, that 133 miles an hour in the year in which he said it would have qualified him for the IndyCar race. He was once a team factory driver for Studebaker. Yes, I said Studebaker as an ancient car when he drove in a body in a couple of road races, most notably the 24 Hours of Daytona. The car, incidentally, was prepared by Ray Dillon. And Joe Ruttman has had a second place in, of all things, the World 100 down at Eldora. He was the second place finisher in the inaugural World 100. Now, in case you didn't know, that's a high-bank, half-mile dirt racetrack. So Joe Ruttman can drive. He has enormous experience.
He has been the best man, but never the groom in Grand National racing. His best finish, a second back in 1981 on the road course at Riverside, California. His best finish this year has been a sixth at Martinsville. Right behind Joe Ruttman on the racetrack is Tim Richmond, and right behind Tim Richmond is the leader of this race, Terry Labonte. Let's give you the drivers who are a lap down. A lap down running in 7th place is Dale Earnhardt. Then 8th is Buddy Baker. 9th is Jody Ridley. 10th is Benny Parsons. 11th is Ricky Rudd. 12th is Bobby Allison. 13th is Ron Bouchard. And 14th is Tim Richmond. 2 laps down. Those drivers include Neil Bonnet, Blake Speed, Kyle Petty, Dave Marcus, Phil Parsons, and Dick Brooks.
It's been one of those races in which you have to think on your feet and on the run, literally. There have been no pauses in the action. It's a race that I would suggest really favors the veteran crew chiefs and the veteran drivers. There is no opportunity to pause and scratch your head and think, what can I do next during a yellow flag or a long delay for a yellow, or perhaps a momentary slowdown in the pace of the race. It has been a qualifying speed pace since the drop of the green flag, and nobody has given the other teams a chance to rest. Labonte, with Dale Inman calling the shots at the pit, has become the dominant force in this race. Bill Elliott has looked strong, but Darrell Waltrip, with Junior Johnson masterminding that operation, is right now the second-running driver and the second-best performer so far today.
And the interval is 6.27 seconds between first and second position. The race record, Bobby Allison, 149.862 miles an hour. August 15th of 1971, and right now we are averaging 154 miles per hour. So Terry Labonte has opened up the interval between himself and second place Darrell Waltrip, and there are also about 3 seconds between Darrell Waltrip and third place Bill Elliott. We'll resume our live coverage from Michigan International Speedway right after these messages. Question of the week is, besides the guys that you compete with regularly, what group of drivers do you admire the most?
Oh, boy, that's a toughie. I admire anybody that can get in one of these things and go fast, but I hate to say this because I'm going to make people in other branches of racing mad, but I think the ASA drivers, the boys that run up in the Midwest and all, I've run against a lot of race drivers in different competition, and I don't think I've ever run against anybody any tougher than those guys are.
Well, I admire the ASA guys. I think that, they run so many shows every week, and they go in and unload, and I think they have a very competitive series. I would say that the Champ Car series or the Indianapolis cars, it seems like I admire those guys. I got into watching their type racing. I really admire those guys.
Well, I think I'd have to say the ASA guys, Artgo, ASA, the Midwest short track racers are the best group of guys that I've ever met.
I enjoy running with the two groups of drivers, actually, the late model sportsman drivers of NASCAR and also the ASA drivers that run in the Midwest here.
I don't really know all race drivers, really, but I think the ones you admire the most are the guys who run the local weekly short track shows a lot of times. They put money out of their own pocket into it a lot of times and come out there and bust their rear ends to run hard. And we go in and run against them a lot of times, and most of the time they end up beating you. So you have to admire that group as a whole the most.
Question of the week is a little feature we like to do for you on our ESPN Auto Racing 84 telecast to bring you a little bit of insight into the drivers and what they're thinking, and it's very interesting that ASA was the overwhelming winner in the poll there, with the Champ Cars also being mentioned.
Well, Bob, I'll tell you what, how about you? Put all those drivers in the spot.
Oh, I passed.
You passed?
I admire all race drivers.
Oh, boy, what a way of squeezing out of that one.
Dale Inman, the crew chief on the Terry Labonte car here at Dick Berggren.
Dale, what's your strategy for the rest of the race?
Well, we got one more pit stop coming at about 152 laps, and then we should be able to go the rest of the way. We'll change the right side tires, and we should be able to go the rest of the way then.
How about the Talladega finish where you sprinted for it and lost? How are you going to handle the tail end of this one?
Well, right now we're not running with 10 cars. If we don't have a caution, we won't have no problem, we don't think, but you can't never tell. Right now, Cale's the fastest car on the racetrack. Other than our car, we're getting away from Darrell a little bit, and we're staying pretty even with the 9 car. But Cale he's running right even with us, but he's like 27 seconds back.
How do all these green flag laps affect your plan?
Right now, we got about an 8-second lead, and that makes it easy if we don't have no caution.
Here's a guy counting on one pit stop, no more cautions, and winning this one.
Now let's pick up on that Talladega story. It had to be one of the most exciting finishes in Grand National racing.
Well, it really did. The difference in that race was when Dale Earnhardt streaked to the lead going down the backstretch, nobody followed him. Nobody stayed up with Dale, and that allowed him to break from the pack, and the 13 others behind him were scrambling around side by side, and Earnhardt was streaking away, and everybody else was side by side, and they just couldn't go as fast as Dale. There is Terry Labonte. He was in that group of cars, as Dick Berggren told you. He sprinted for the lead, and they just fell short. There was so much traffic going on in the latter stages of the race. He just really didn't know how to play it until the final lap.
Here's a battle for 8th position involving Benny Parsons and Buddy Baker. Right now, Benny Parsons has the 8th position, and Buddy runs in 9th spot down the backstretch.
By the way, in case you're wondering, have they ever run a race at the Michigan International Speedway that went the distance without a yellow flag? Answer, yes.
Yes.
Back in 1973, Buddy Baker was the fastest qualifier on that day, and he parlayed it in not only to the pole position, but also a top 5 finish. But David Pearson was the winner who started on the outside pole. 1973, 11 years ago, a 400-mile race here at MIS, no caution.
Now, that statistic that we gave you just before the last commercial about Bobby Allison having the record of 149.862, that is for this particular race, the second race of the year here at Michigan. However, the all-time record is, as Larry indicated, held by David Pearson in what used to be the Gabriel 400, the first race of the two for Grand National cars here at Michigan, 153.4, and the average speed with 135 laps completed this afternoon, 65 laps to go, 154.30 miles an hour.
Again, you're watching top 10 action. It's Benny Parsons, points leader, Dale Earnhardt, and Earnhardt squirming coming through turn number 4, and Buddy Baker just updating a little bit on that leader scoring. Labonte, by the way, they're looking at Cale Yarborough. as Labonte comes out of turn number 2, Yarborough is still between turns 3 and 4, so he has a healthy lead.
The lead is about 8 seconds, and it has grown slightly in the last few laps. Terry Labonte is looking good, looking for his 4th victory. Will return at Michigan in a moment. The champion Spark Plug 400. 138 laps completed. Terry Labonte leads with an 8.14-second advantage on second place Darrell Waltrip, and he has a 4-second advantage over third place Bill Elliott. There is Bobby Allison from Charlotte, North Carolina, formerly from Hueytown, Alabama. It's not been a particularly good year for Bobby Allison, and I talked to him about that.
Bobby, have you ever been to the point this year of being real discouraged? Seems as how you're the defending champion and things haven't gone completely your way this year. Have you been discouraged any time?
Well, I was real discouraged when that wrecker was dragging us in over there at Pocono with that thing torn up from bumper to bumper. But Gary and the crew jumped on it like I knew they would, and my discouragement kind of went away as they were patching the car up, and we got back out and at least finished the race. There's been some tough times this year. It certainly hasn't been our best year, but I feel like everybody's working hard, and don't count us out.
Bobby's 6th in the point standings right now, and you really only have to look at the fact that he has won $420,480, tops among money winners in 1984, to indicate that he can't be too discouraged.
And there's what at one time was an almost unthinkable sight in a Grand National stock car race. Richard Petty 1 lap down, and his son Kyle Petty at the same time starts in the pit area. 140 laps down, could be the planned pit stop. It's a little early. He might be in jeopardy of his ability in terms of his ability to go the distance. There's that patented two-tone Petty front windshield. As you zoom inside the cockpit, look at this young Charger, Kyle Petty. A great high school athlete, a multi-talented man. And you know, Bob, I think for the first time, really, if there's ever any question about Kyle Petty's sincerity about being a racing driver, it's been answered in the affirmative in the last 2-3 weeks, last month. He has really proven to the world, because of his response to a lot of the things that have happened, both personally and professionally, in the last month, he wants to be a race driver. And I think that there's a real good possibility this guy still could be a top star in this division.
With Kyle's dad being put a lap down, there are now 5 cars on the lead lap. 141 laps completed. We'll be back in a moment. When we began today's champion Spark Plug 400 from Michigan, we had 40 starters. The average speed was 160.726. The pole sitter was Bill Elliott at 165.217. The slowest qualifier was 158.231, that being Ken Schrader. The oldest driver in the field, 49, David Pearson. He's already out of the competition. The youngest driver in the race, Bobby Hillen, age 20, is still in. Now, there's a list of the manufacturers of the cars that started this race: 22 Chevy, 6 Pontiac, 6 Fords, 4 Buicks, an Olds, and Buddy Arrington's Chrysler.
Ford certainly made the most of it, though, as it seems to always do. There aren't that many Fords on the trail, but one of them, and namely one that was painted red and white, number 9, I think it was. Yeah, there it is. We've seen him a couple of times today and a couple of times this weekend.
Well, Bill Elliott is in the pits right now for his scheduled pit stop. Geez, it's awfully early for Elliott to be able to go all the way. If he had gone past lap 150, maybe he could have done it. This way, it suggests he probably won't be able to. It was, however, a good green flag pit stop where they changed left side tires, got him a full load of fuel, and off he's going. Now, several of the other competitors are going to start coming in at this point in order to make their what should be a final round of pit stops.
Well, Dick, will it be the final pit stop for Bill Elliott? It's only lap 145. We got 55 more to go. Will he have to stop again, you think?
Yeah, it would be my guess, Bob, that he'll probably have to stop again. There's a possibility, of course, that he can go beyond that. But based on this strategy, stopping at lap 145 is just a little bit too early to go all the way, in my opinion.
Bob, the furthest that Bill has gone all day is 51 laps. So I'm going to go along with Dick on this one. I don't think it can happen, unless they've been hiding a little something. Of course, you got to figure the odds favor, I hate to say this, but the odds favor a caution flag. If we have one caution flag past lap 150, just about all these bets in terms of fuel mileage playing a role in this race will be off. This guy right here, I doubt that he has any problems at all. First of all, he's up to lap 146. Labonte's stops have been like clockwork at almost 50 laps, almost 100 laps, so Labonte appears to be in good shape. And see, the other interesting thing that's helping Terry is that Terry is running so well, he is probably not using the maximum amount of throttle every lap all the way around. When you're running well, when you're running faster than everybody, it can actually help conserve a little bit of fuel for you in moments like this.
Dale Yarborough also makes the stop here in the Hardy Chevrolet.
Dale Yarborough's been one of those guys who has had great fuel mileage in the 1984 season. His stop comes a little early for most teams, but for this team, you figure 54 laps, a little more than 100 miles, that just shouldn't be a problem. He did go a lap down, Bob, while he was sitting in the pit area. He's going to make it up with all the pit stops going down.
Well, will Bill Elliott have to make 2 more pit stops or 1 more pit stop? Perhaps we can get the answer to that from Dick Berggren.
Well, here's the man who knows for sure whether he's going to have to make another pit stop. And with Ernie Elliott, his brother and his crew chief. Are you folks going to have to make another pit stop, Ernie?
Yeah, we'll have to make a stop about 5 laps from the end if it goes under green. We just can't do any better than that.
Well, what's your situation in terms of the possibility of winning the race then?
Well, we feel like we've got a good shot at winning the race, but we've got to have a break. Because, you know, we're just not getting as good a fuel mileage as the Chevrolets are getting.
So you need a yellow flag?
Yes, we need a yellow.
And there hasn't been one all day. Ernie Elliott's just got to have one at this point.
And Dick, on the racetrack, Bill Elliott is up to speed, but as we look toward turn number 4, Bill Elliott in 5th place, Richard Petty is slowing and coming into the pits. He slowed during the drive down the backstretch, and here is Richard Petty coming in for a stop, and this could be something other than routine.
Yeah, I think so. It could be simply a matter of running out of fuel, although that does not seem likely. Petty comes in now on lap 148. He had pitted at laps 48 and 99, so his track record up to this point would indicate spraying what is probably ether, an ether-based substance underneath the hood to help get the car restarted. My guess now is he simply ran out of fuel, but that's speculation, Bob. Fires up and away he roars.
Yeah, he gets it started once again, and although he's moving slowly out of the pits, the car is under its own power. Now he begins to pick up the pace, and Richard Petty goes back into the hunt.
Of course, what hurts you so badly in a situation like that is not that you had to stop or the actual amount of time that you spent in the pits, but all the time that Richard lost coasting, as you said, down the backstretch and agonizingly slow down pit road.
Terry Labonte still remains on the point as the leader. Waltrip is second. Harry Gant third. Bill Elliott is fourth, and in 5th place now, a lap down because of the pit stop, is Cale Yarborough. In 6th was Richard Petty until he came in. 7th, Benny Parsons. 8th, Buddy Baker. 9th, Dale Earnhardt. 10th, Jody Ridley. 11th, Ron Bouchard. 12th is Bobby Allison. 2 laps down in 13th place, Ricky Rudd. Then in 14th spot is Neil Bonnet, and 15th is Lake Speed.
22 gallons of gasoline. The standard is 100 miles, or on a 2-mile racetrack, 50 laps. Labonte has not yet come in. 150 laps have been completed, meaning that now there is less than 100 miles to go in the race. So anytime now Labonte pits, he should be able to go the distance. Looks like he might be slowing down. He's ready to tuck it in as he comes off of turn number 4. As you look at Dale Inman towering above the pit crew, he points rather pointedly to a couple crew members saying, "Here he comes. We're the leader. Let's get busy."
Terry Labonte is slowing and stopping in his pit. The crew on the right side of the car jacks the car up, and the other 2 members on that side take off the tires. The clock ticks away. It's 9 seconds, now 10. Fuel also being put in the car. A crew member shooting that ether into the engine. It's a 17.3-second pit stop, and Terry Labonte is also slow getting out of the pits, but he finally finds the fire and moves back out.
Yeah, I think that car died on him, Bob, when he was coming down the pit road. I think that perhaps was what Dale Inman was hollering at, because they were prepared for that stop, but Dale obviously was startled about something, and he made that large howl and call, and they started to scramble around. Now, here's the guy who's been running second and third all day, Darrell Waltrip. So this is a very important stop for Darrell Waltrip.
Waltrip is in right now. Jeff Hammond on the jack by the right-hand side of the car. Up and down goes the handle. They've got the right side tires off already. Hammond now retrieving the right front wheel that had come off. Fast flip of the air hose. Waltrip, very good stop.
It's 14.5 seconds, Dick, but some frantic movement by Darrell Waltrip in that car. Could he have wanted the windshield wiped off and didn't get it, or what was he signaling for?
Bob, I don't know. I caught it just at the very end of it, but you're right. He was doing a lot of waving. I think it was certainly not as simple as wanting the windshield clean. It was something perhaps about the setup of the car, but there just wasn't any more time to do anything about it. Maybe they're hoping for a yellow flag. Waltrip may have been trying to say something to Jeff Hammond and Junior Johnson that, hey, if we get a yellow flag, there's something that we got to correct if we want to catch this guy. Here's the only thing that's slowed Labonte down all day, getting caught in traffic like this.
The traffic in front of him, Tim Richmond on the high side at number 27, and Dave Marcus in 75, and by and large, Terry Labonte is trapped back there. Now Tim Richmond moves toward the inside of the racetrack and gives Labonte the line up high, but Labonte doesn't want it.
Bob, the first three cars right now are as close as they have been since about lap 40. Waltrip is the next car behind that group you're looking at right there, and Bill Elliott also did very well in the last pit stop. There's only about 3 or 4 seconds. There's Waltrip right there now in the middle of your screen, and Elliott is just behind Waltrip out of the picture by maybe 10 or 15 car lengths.
So it looks like the battle for the lead may be shaping up here as this race draws to its closing stages. Richard Petty in car number 43 has made his probable last pit stop of the afternoon, and now ESPN and STP present a pit stop.
This is another STP pit stop. I'm Larry Newberg talking with Richard Petty, the man who recently set a milestone in Grand National Stock Car Racing, win number 200. You know, putting together the crew is a big part of any Grand National team. And, Richard, where do they come from?
Well, they really come from all over. We got one boy from California. We got one from Massachusetts. We got a lot of local boys. When we started the team this year, I brought a couple of my boys along with me, and then Buddy Parrott picked up 4 or 5 boys that he'd worked with before. And, you know, they just come from all over. They just wander in from time to time, or they come by and they want to help, and you see that they're good help, and you put them busy, you know, and, you know, some of them work out and some of them don't.
How do you select them? Do you audition? Do you actually have a little contest, see if they can work on the car?
Well, yeah, we really do. What they do, you know, we trying to put a pit crew and stuff together, we get out in front of the shop there and put all of our equipment out, set the car out. And somebody wants to try out changing tires, we give him a chance. If he wants to try gassing the car or jacking the car, and then what we do then is pick the best people we got, and if we're slack on one particular position, then we go out and do a little bargaining with somebody and try to get somebody to come in that can take that slot.
Do you have team meetings the night before a major race? Do you actually sit down at a round table and talk about what you want to accomplish?
Well, some of the bigger races we do. You know, we know the people that we've got to compete with in the race and sort of how we think the race is going to run, because we know how good we're running and how good they're running. But the majority of the races, we just sort of play it by ear, because the situation changes every time you make a pit stop or every time somebody has trouble.
Everybody wants to know, Richard, is the pay good?
Well, we make a living out of it. I guess I'll put it that way.
Thanks, Richard. This has been another STP Pit Stop. I'm Larry Newberg.
We are back with our live coverage of the 20th stop on the Grand National Tour for 1984, the Champion Spark Plug 400 from Michigan International Speedway, and the battle has heated up considerably. Terry Labonte and Darrell Waltrip are now running right together on the racetrack. Well, don't forget our exciting coverage of the CFA this autumn as we begin coverage with a doubleheader on Saturday, September the 1st at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's Western Conference champion Brigham Young against Pittsburgh, and then later that same day, Florida against Miami.
The question is, of course, who will the next pro quarterback from BYU be? There's always somebody at BYU who can throw the football. They'll be going up against that very stout, now famous Pittsburgh defense. You know that 1 or 2 people on the Pittsburgh defense are always headed for stardom in the NFL. or the USFL or any other pro football league. Don't mean to slight the rest of you guys.
Terry Labonte and Darrell Waltrip are now battling for the lead. Labonte has been able to hold off Darrell's challenge in the last few laps, but now Darrell's drafting on Terry as they come across the finish line and move through the tri-oval down into turn number 1. And not that far behind is the third place, Bill Elliott. Cale Yarborough still running 4th, and Harry Gant is 5th. Those 5 cars are on the lead lap. Now, Cale did go a lap down during his pit stop, but gained it back when the others came in.
Yeah, and remember that Bill Elliott, we have been told, has to stop one more time. We believe that he is the only one who has to do so. Although Gant did stop. No, he stopped at lap 150. Waltrip stopped at lap 151. And Labonte stopped at lap 150 also. So only Bill Elliott, among the top 5, apparently faces yet one other break in the action in terms of his competition on the Speedway. That's really working to his disadvantage right now. Everybody else wants to go the rest of this race green. Bill Elliott is just sitting on the edge of the cliff, waiting to jump off and get down in the pits if he sees the yellow flag.
As these cars were in turn number 4 last lap, you may have noticed the car running slow on the apron of the racetrack. That was the number 66 of Phil Parsons, who is in for a stop as we continue to watch the leaders down the backstretch. Now, Terry moving to the inside and Darrell to the outside in turn number 3. Darrell pulling alongside Terry Labonte and acting like he would like to take the lead, but no, he settles back into second spot and is content at this point to stay in second spot. They cross the stripe once again and complete lap 163. Labonte and Darrell Waltrip running first and second.
This is a racetrack where, with a little bit of superiority in terms of setup, you can pull away from the field. Not as easy to hook up in a draft with these 3,700-pound stockers here at Michigan and really make some progress with it like it is the bigger tracks of Talladega and Daytona. I think Waltrip's serious about this. That'd be my guess. I think if he feels as though he's running faster than Labonte, he'd like to get around and kind of get on about his race and leave Labonte and Bill Elliott at his weight. Waltrip and Labonte may not know, Bob, that Bill Elliott has to stop one more time. Usually the information up and down pit road is pretty good, and they kind of keep an eye on everybody else. 50-50 are the chances that they know that. But Waltrip, I would suggest that if he feels as though he can pass Labonte, he might wait if you're in a bigger racetrack here in Michigan.
Bill Elliott is closing quickly on second place. Darrell Waltrip. Let's go down to Dick Berggren.
Of the several teams that are running in the front of the pack right now, 3 of the 5 would like to see at least a caution flag, or certainly would like to make another pit stop. Terry Labonte's crew says yes, they can probably make it on the fuel that they've got, but it's going to be close. Harry Gant's crew says the same thing. They'd like to see a caution so they can adjust the car a little bit. Waltrip's crew says they can go all the way without another fuel stop. And by the way, the gesturing Darrell was doing on that pit stop was communicating that he would like the windshield wiped. Elliott's crew says they definitely need to get more fuel in that car. And in fact, they've got the pit pouring up down pit road now for Tim Richmond, who's going to come in. Elliott needs another stop. They'd like to have that on the yellow flag. Cale Yarborough's crew said they started the day with a push problem. That's a chassis problem. They've worked on it as best as possible. They've got it pretty good. They think, they hope they can go all the way. Everybody likes to see a caution flag so they get their cars set up for a final run to the checker. Everybody's hoping they've got enough gas, except Elliott, who knows he hasn't.
Well, this has been an incredibly interesting race because of the fact we have had no yellows. You wouldn't think of a 400-mile, 200-lap race on a 2-mile high-bank track would be a sprint race, but that's exactly what it's turned into today.
It's happened that way so often here at the Michigan International Speedway. It is a relatively short race for a super speedway, and because of the pace, you always have to go all out for the entirety of the race. There's Rodney Combs, the dirt tracker. We'll call him a dirt tracker, although most of his early career work was done on a short track paved down in Cincinnati, Ohio, the Queen City, once called the Tri-County Speedway. He actually started his career out on dirt at that same racetrack. He and Booby Harrington have got hooked up in the Red Roof Inn. There was a time when it didn't look as though that Booby Harrington was going to be able to utilize all the Jim Stacy equipment that he inherited, but Jim Truman and the Red Roof Inn people came along and gotten his car back out on the racetrack. Rodney qualified up into the top 20 for today's race.
Matter of fact, he was 19th fastest qualifier at 160.775. Out-qualified such drivers as Neil Bonnet, Richard Petty, and Bobby Allen. First, second, and third right here. Labonte to the inside and high on the racetrack. Second place, Darrell Waltrip at number 11. Right behind him is Bill Elliott. We've completed 166 laps. The pace continues at a record 154.67. We'll be back at Michigan. I invite you to join us each Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Speed Week, our weekly half-hour racing show in which we review the activity from the previous weekend and also bring you some features on the drivers and the crews throughout auto racing. Speed Week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursdays here on ESPN. The battle at Michigan International Speedway in the Champions Spark Plug 400 is among three cars: Terry Labonte, Darrell Waltrip, and Bill Elliott, and there they are crossing the start-finish line, completing 170 laps, only 30 to go. We still have not had a caution flag all afternoon, and the green pace is now 154.67 average.
Frustrating for Bill Elliott. At this point, Elliott has nothing to lose. He has got to run flat out and try and take the lead. He would like to take the lead, build up a little bit of cushion, then dart into the pits late in the race, and try and get into and out of the pits before these two guys keep going around. Labonte and Waltrip can hold back. Labonte way up high, and Waltrip gets underneath. Terry Labonte much higher than I'm sure he wanted to be. The car still quivering just a bit as he comes out of number 4, looks for the tri-oval. Elliott moves up, and Waltrip is taking over the number 1 position.
Terry's car slid way high on the 18th-degree banking in turn 3, and Darrell was able to sneak underneath. Now, Terry Labonte is taking the inside line in turn number 2, trying to get the lead back, but it looks like that Darrell has the line. They come off of turn number 2 and run side by side, door handle to door handle, down the backstretch. Bill Elliott is watching the activity up in front of him.
He should be able to move up at this point with the two of them side by side. Elliott should be picking up somewhat of a draft. Labonte coming back the last lap, remember right here, he slid way up high by the wall. I thought something may have gone wrong with the car, but it looks like now it just might have been one of those moments in the race. Labonte trying to get the lead back.
And they're lapping Ken Schrader, as Ken is going rather slowly to the inside of the racetrack. They're putting another lap on Ken, who is one of the drivers, by the way, who would like for this race to be over quickly. Why? Well, because he's going to get in his passenger car at the checkered flag here and drive about 3 hours to Kokomo, Indiana, and compete there in a sprint car race later tonight.
Bill Elliott still looking for that hole there as Waltrip is able to stave off the challenges of Terry Labonte. The jam is on, but Labonte can't take advantage of it. Joe Ruttman now moving down to the low side of the speedway. Checked the mirrors. He saw what's coming up and moved out of the way. Labonte and Waltrip with plenty of racing room. Elliott continuing to stop. Remember, I was about to say that Waltrip and Labonte, they may have to just go a little soft on that accelerator from time to time. They want to make absolutely certain that they can finish this race, go the distance under green flag, and not give them a chance for fresh drink of fuel in the pits. But Elliott, he has got to run flat out. Bill Elliott has got to consider every lap like the white flag. He needs to get to the lead and build up some type of an advantage if it's at all possible.
The top 3, Darrell Waltrip, Franklin, Tennessee. Second. Well, we had a change. There's Bill Elliott in second position. And right behind Bill is Terry Labonte in car number 44. Darrell Waltrip looking for his 4th win on the 1984 Winston Cup Series. Bill Elliott looking for his 2nd win. His 1st win of this year came here at Michigan. And Terry Labonte is looking for his 2nd win of the year. His win came at Riverside, California.
Neil Bonnet trying to steer that car straight through turns 3 and 4, and he was really having a handful there as he came through the banking. Neil Bonnet, he has led more laps than any other non-winner in the 1984 season. Remember, he had that one race where the victory was taken away from him on Monday morning.
Bonnet's car is something unusual. A lot of automobile. It's a front steer car, which Junior Johnson ordinarily doesn't run. But even more than that, it is somewhat experimental. It's very late in the season to start experimenting things, but Junior apparently has decided to go ahead and do that. It's experimental enough that, in fact, in the garage area yesterday, they kept blankets, tarps over the top of the suspension components, just to make sure nobody got a look at it. Waltrip's car also is not the typical Junior Johnson car. It also is a front steer automobile. It's only run once before, that in the Daytona 500. Only the second time out for that car. Kind of late in the season to start experimenting, and this is a bit unusual for Johnson-Hodgson Racing.
Well, Dick, when we began this 1984 season, there was all kind of questions as to whether or not the two-car team was going to work with Junior Johnson. What is the feeling among the crew members and among the top-level people on this crew, if it has worked or not?
Well, I think the real question is not whether the two-car team has worked as much as what has happened to the Johnson-Hodgson team. Now, the Bonnet organization has suffered injuries, both to the crew chief, who isn't even here today. He broke his leg badly at Daytona. He's missed a lot of the races. Their driver broke his wrist. Darrell Waltrip has won 3 races. He's running very strongly. He certainly is in contention for the championship. So I would say at least the two-car concept works if you got one car that's really running strong. The other one, well, there certainly are some good reasons that it's not right in the front of the point chase.
Battle continues on the racetrack, especially for second spot, as Terry Labonte and Bill Elliott continue to battle for that second spot, as up ahead they see Darrell Waltrip in the lead. We'll resume our live coverage of the Champion Spark Plug 400. For Top Rank Boxing on August the 23rd at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time from Resorts International in Atlantic City. Sam Smith and Al Bernstein will bring us the 10-round lightweight contest between Chris Calvin from Nashville, Tennessee, and Remo DiCarlo from Toronto, Canada. Calvin is 12-3-1 with 10 KOs, and DiCarlo is 11-1 with 2 knockouts. Top Rank Boxing, August the 23rd. And while we're talking about boxing, let us not forget to congratulate all of the athletes at the 23rd Olympiad, but especially the U.S. boxing team, which had great success.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of flag waving, but even amidst and apart from all of that, it has been remarkable, the performance in the 1984 Olympic Games, and I think it is a direct response to the fact that so many people were discouraged and unhappy over what happened in 1980, and they waited 8 years to do it, and they were loaded for bear when the opportunity came.
Bobby Allison and Ron Bouchard are right together on the racetrack. Our information is that Ron Bouchard is only 1 lap down, while Bobby Allison has continued to have problems with that number 22 Miller High Life Dygar Buick and is 2 laps in the rear.
Of course, Wayne Bumgardner, who was one of the primary people involved with the Allison team, has moved over to the Ron Bouchard team.
4 leaders so far in the race, 9 lead changes. No caution flags to this point with only 20 laps to go. Dick Berggren is with Waddell Wilson.
Waddell, any rabbits to pull out of the hat here?
No, I feel like right now the car's running good. We're running as quick as the leaders. The only thing about it, time's running out, and we need a caution so we can get back with the front runners.
Okay, there's Waddell Wilson with the story on Cale Yarborough's car.
Right down the line, everybody wants a caution flag.
And Bob, Bill Elliott has accomplished part of his task. There you see him in the red and white number 9. He does have the lead, but he cannot chase Waltrip and Labonte.
Because of the fact that we have run so many laps under green and we have had no cautions, this situation regarding fuel mileage is beginning to be of interest once again. And we asked Cale Yarborough about extra fuel.
Is it possible that there are competitors here cheating on fuel?
Well, you know, when the gas mileage thing first came about, and of course Bobby Allison was getting better fuel mileage than anybody else, I really believed at the time that they were doing something that wasn't quite legal. But since Waddell's gone to work and some of the other guys have gone to work on fuel mileage and working on the carburetors to get better fuel mileage, and also me doing my part in stretching the fuel mileage out, I don't really believe there's anybody here that's doing anything illegal as far as fuel mileage is concerned.
So, quite a different viewpoint than Ricky Rudd had a couple of weeks ago when we were in Pocono, when he out and out said there is cheating going on.
Well, Well, as an interesting sidelight to that, I commented myself earlier in the broadcast that my feeling is kind of gravitated toward the fact that the engineering is doing it, not something illegal. I did ask a couple of crew chiefs this week, would it be possible to hide fuel in these cars, even considering all the research, all of the testing, all of the challenges that have been made in regards to taking apart the cars? The answer was, yeah, we think it would be possible, but it doesn't look like it really happened.
Bill Elliott has moved back into the lead, and he has put that much distance between himself and Darrell Waltrip, and Terry Labonte is in third position, but he too has fallen behind Darrell Waltrip just a bit. So these three cars that were running right together on the racetrack a few laps ago, now Bill Elliott is beginning to pull away from Darrell Waltrip. Well, we mentioned at the opening of the show how there had been 12 different winners in 19 races this year, and it looks like that we will not have a new winner because the first three at this point in the race have won on the 84 trail. There they were earlier today, just after the drivers' meeting. The 12 winners in NASCAR competition from left to right: Tim Richmond, Benny Parsons, Darrell Waltrip, Cale Yarborough, Dale Earnhardt, Harry Gant, Ricky Rudd, Richard Petty, Terry Labonte, Bill Elliott, Jeff Bodine, and Bobby Allison.
Not only the first three, but the first five guys, the only five on the same lap, have already won in 1984, so we're going to have yet another repeat winner. But the interesting thing is the point standings. They will continue to still be an issue. Waltrip looks like he's going to be in good position here to pick up some points on Earnhardt, but still, Labonte will finish up near the front. Elliott will probably finish up near the front. The way this point thing is going to go down right through the final race yet another year.
And we will, of course, update you on the point standings, how this race came out, and the other important auto racing events of the week when you join us for Speed Week, Thursdays at 7:30 here on ESPN. Bill Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia, who calls his second home Brooklyn, Michigan, right up the road, is leading here at Michigan. He won the race earlier this year here at this racetrack. He's putting another lap on Tim Richmond, who is running relatively slowly on the inside off the track. Elliott sets the car in turn number 3. Second spot is Darrell Waltrip. Third, Terry Labonte. Fourth is Cale Yarborough. And fifth is Harry Gant. We'll be back with more from the Michigan 400. We have 12 laps to go. Elliott, Waltrip, and Terry Labonte are up front at the Champions Spark Plug 400. And the speed of the race has fallen a little to 153.79, but we continue to be at record-breaking pace here because of the fact that we have had no yellow flags.
Okay, you're Bill Elliott. You're in the driver's seat. You've been told by your crew you probably can't go the distance. Really, it is out of your hands. You drive as fast as you possibly can, and you hope, you pray for a caution flag. How do you handle it? The only thing you can possibly do is move to the front, which he did about 7 or 8 laps ago, and try and put as much daylight between himself and Cale Yarborough, Terry Labonte, and Darrell Waltrip, the fourth, third, and second running cars in that order. You're hoping for a yellow flag. You're watching the light. Every time you pass a corner and you see one of those lights, you look at that green light and you heave again. You hope for a yellow. You hope in the next corner that the yellow light flashes. He watches the dashboard, watching for the red, low fuel warning light to pop on. If it pops on, you don't have any choice. You have to duck in immediately. So for Bill Elliott, the race just drags on agonizingly fast, unfortunately, as the laps continue to go by.
Well, Bill will have his work cut out for him because you figure a pit stop will take about maybe 10, 12 seconds to just put fuel in the car. However, you've got to consider the slowing down and the speeding up. And right now, we'll trying to determine how much of a lead he has. It's about 3 or 4 seconds on Darrell Waltrip.
Not nearly enough.
No, it really isn't. And Bill would have to really stand on the gas and do a near miracle to win the race if he does have to pit again. There is Harry Gant in car number 33, who has been working very smoothly all day. He is running in 5th spot
Yeah, here he has no fuel problems whatsoever. He has been like clockwork, about lap 50, about lap 100, and right at lap 150. So Gant is right on schedule, as he has been the last 3 or 4 races. They are one of the crews that made the breakthrough in the fuel efficiency gain. Harry Gant right now runs in 4th position, or rather 5th position, and should something happen to Elliott, namely just that pit stop that we're anticipating, Harry is really going to benefit from it. But you know, when you are Bill Elliott in this case, Ernie and Dan Elliott and crew, you almost have to come in, Bob, because they're going after the points championship this year as well as wins in a race. Now, in years past, when they were not going after the points championship, they could let it all hang out, just cast caution to the wind and go after victory. But in this particular case, they want a top 5 finish. They don't want to run out of fuel 2 or 3 laps in the end and end up finishing about 16th or 17th, which is where they would if they did not finish this race, say, dropping out with 5 laps to go. So not only is their fate sealed in terms of whether or not we have a caution flag to go the rest of the distance green, they got to stop. They don't have any choice in the matter because they're going after points.
Well, Bill Elliott is 3rd in the point standings with 2,764. He is just 14 points behind 2nd place Terry Labonte and is only 79 points out of the lead as far as the point standings are concerned. There is Harry Gant, car number 33, moving down the backstretch and into turn number 3 as we pick up the leaders once again. Bill Elliott in car 9, leading at this point, about a 3-second lead over Darrell Waltrip and then Terry Labonte. There are
maybe slowing, Bob. Elliott may be slowing.
Yes, he is. He is coming in for a stop. It appears 193 laps will be completed when the leaders cross the stripe, and here is Bill Elliott making the stop 7 laps from the finish, leading a tough break, but those mileage problems have reared their ugly head again for Bill Elliott.
The engine is stalled. It's stalled. He's trying to get it started. The crew is chasing him down pit road. It started. It stalled again, and it started again, and there he finally goes. An agonizingly difficult pit stop for Bill Elliott. The crew is very, very disappointed at that pit stop.
And well, they should be. He's lost about a little over a half a lap here. The leaders, as you can see in the upper right, are rounding turn number 4 now, while Bill Elliott is still picking up speed and moving on high onto the racetrack in turn number 2, now onto the backstretch. It's about a half a lap that he lost in that pit stop. So now we concentrate on who's going to win, Darrell Waltrip or Terry Labonte, or will perhaps the 3rd place car of Cale Yarborough now pull off the win. We've got 6 laps to go, less than 6 to go.
Elliott was able to get out in front of Harry Gant, but behind Cale Yarborough. So Bill Elliott now relegated to 4th position simply because he didn't have the same economy as 3 people running in front of him.
Once again, the cars are in turn number 3. Labonte, who we have seen perhaps experiencing handling problems at times during the day, did slide up high onto the racetrack a few laps ago and lost the position, and we noticed on that particular lap he was just a little less stable getting through the turn than Darrell Waltrip was. Across the stripe again and head down into turn number 1. Labonte chooses the low line in turn number 1 while Waltrip stays high.
One thing for certain, Darrell Waltrip is not going to give anything away. Watch for Waltrip to be near perfect on these final 5 laps. He's a man with tremendous experience. He's done very well, needless to say, the past 3 or 4 seasons, and he seldom makes an error in the final 10 laps of a race. If Labonte wins this one, he's going to have to drive one of the races of his life.
3rd place, Cale Yarborough. The question is, can Bill Elliott catch Cale and move into 3rd? There is Yarborough at the end of the backstretch. He moved into 3rd when Bill Elliott moved into the pit area for a stop. And there is Bill Elliott. Finally, you can see he's considerably behind Cale Yarborough, so he's got his work cut out for him to even finish in a 3rd position in this race.
And the point being that Yarborough, as we've heard for about the last 100 laps from everybody, has been running as fast as the leader. He just got a little bit behind between lap 50 and lap 100, and he's never been able to make up the difference.
The leaders will complete lap 197 when they come by this time. There will be 3 more laps to go. It's prediction time. Waltrip or Labonte?
If we were on a super speedway, I'd say Labonte, but here at Michigan, Darrell Waltrip.
All right. I'm going to go for Waltrip, too. He's looked very strong throughout the afternoon. So has Terry Labonte. There have been only 4 leaders, Elliott, Labonte, Waltrip, and Cale Yarborough for 1 lap, while everybody else was pitting. But basically, it's been a race between or among 3 cars. Yarborough is pitting. Yarborough is pitting, believe it or not. So Bill Elliott is, if things go well the rest of the way, the next 3 laps, he will pick up the 3rd spot. A very unexpected situation here. They put a few drops of fuel into the car, just enough for it to complete 6 more miles, and Yarborough is back out there.
Well, you kind of figured they were cutting it close. They had stopped at lap 146, although Waddell felt they could go 54 laps or 108 miles, but apparently that big red light flashed on, and Cale Yarborough had to come in, and Bill Elliott re-inherits 3rd place.
2 more laps to go, and now Labonte begins to show some muscle on the inside as they move into the backstretch. Labonte, however, unable to scrap the lead away from Darrell Waltrip at this point. Less than 2 laps to go, a lap and a half, 3 miles before the checkered flag will fall.
A great study in driving styles. Now watch Darrell Waltrip's move. Let's see what Darrell does to try and hold back Terry Labonte. Will he drop down low coming through the tri-oval? That is a very characteristic and common move here at the Michigan International Speedway. Labonte seems to be very good down on the bottom of the corners, particularly in 1 and 2. That may be Terry's last chance. Here comes Darrell through the tri-oval.
Harold Kinder waves the white flag. We have a car smoking very badly in turn number 1. You can see the smoke there. That is Jody Ridley. He's already been given the black flag. It probably will not bring out a caution for the last lap. Even if it does, the guys will race toward the checkered flag, and we're going to determine a winner here. There is Jody Ridley smoking badly at the end of the backstretch. Now the leaders approach the end of the backstretch with Darrell Waltrip being able to put a little bit of real estate between himself and Terry Labonte. They set their cars into turn number 3. 2 more turns to go before this Champions Spark Plug 400 is history. Darrell Waltrip leads Terry Labonte off of turn number 4. The smoke from Jody.
Labonte in trouble almost.
He's sliding to the inside, but manages to regain control, and Darrell Waltrip wins the race. Labonte second, almost lost it there in turn 4, but managed to hang on. Here comes Bill Elliott, and it looks like that Bill is going to finish in 3rd position. 4th unofficially is going to be Harry Gant, and then Cale Yarborough. So an exciting finish there as Labonte nearly lost control. There is Bill Elliott crossing the stripe, 3rd place right there. Labonte nearly losing control in turn 4 as he pushed it just a little too hard, trying to gain the lead away from Darrell Waltrip. Still, the smoke from Jody Ridley's car is very visible on the track. Jody is still out there running on the low side of the racetrack, and Richard Petty coasts across the finish line. Out of fuel, apparently.
Yeah, they cut it close in the last stop. Remember him coming across very slowly. And here is that last turn on the last lap. Look at Terry sliding up towards the wall. I think he may have just barely nicked it. Boy, he did an excellent job of grabbing that car and picking it back up because he was gone.
You figure you were sliding down some banking of about maybe 16 degrees at that area of the racetrack, and he did a heck of a job gathering that car in. Well, there is the winner, Darrell Waltrip, his 4th victory of the year, and that means he has won more races now on the Winston Cup circuit than any other driver. Dick Berggren will talk with him in victory lane when we return to Michigan International Speedway.
For it.
Back at Michigan International Speedway, let's go right now to Victory Lane, where Dick Berggren is with the winner of the Champion Spark Plug 400, Darrell Waltrip.
And Darrell has just climbed out of his race car. Darrell, you look like a pretty happy race driver.
I'm tickled to death. The car just runs so well, and everything worked good. The guys did a good job in the pit. We had some breaks. You know, Bill had a little trouble. I thought he probably could outrun me, but I had a little something left for him, and had to use it on Terry because he run a good race too. But this Mike Laughlin Chevrolet really run good today. This Budweiser car, and I want to thank Goodyear and say hello to everybody at home.
Now, Darrell, on your last... Oh, there's a kiss from his wife, Stevie. Oh, she's happy, and so is Darrell. On your last pit stop, you were motioning for them to clean the windshield. How bad was your visibility?
It was when the sun would go in and out of the clouds, it would really hinder me. I couldn't see good in turn 1. But otherwise, it wasn't too bad up here on the other end, so I had to kind of stay away from that wall. The car really wanted to get up by it, and I had to really watch. I'd like to say happy birthday to Warner, too, if you're watching.
And 2 out of your 5 top competitors here this afternoon had to come in for fuel right at the very tail end. You didn't. How much have you guys been working on this fuel situation?
A lot. You know, after you get beat so many times by something like that, you go to work and see what you can do about it. And Junior and Brad and Jeff and all the boys in the shop did a good job with the engine today. It really did run well.
Toward the end of the race, there was a lot of smoke from one of the cars, and Labonte got very much out of shape right at the very tail end. Did that make the racetrack greasy, Darrell?
It really didn't. It was a hindrance from your view more than anything, the smoke from the car. I don't believe he was putting down a lot of oil. I didn't feel it if it was, but I don't believe it would have made any difference anyway. I know Terry he was coming if he could, and I was going to hold him off if I could if we all went into the oil and into the wall, because it's going to be close.
And there's Darrell Waltrip, the winner here this afternoon.
Congratulations, Darrell. It was not perhaps the most exciting race we have seen at Michigan, but nevertheless some good competition, especially there in the last 50 or 75 laps.
Yeah, the first thing I'd like to also say before we talk a little bit more about the race, say hi to Doug Richard back in the hospital, hopefully watching, and also Jim Gardner of the Dyguard team. We've been remiss in not mentioning that Jim had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. Hope he had a chance to see the broadcast. One thing I'd like to say about the race, Bob, I know there were no cautions. I know we didn't have 14 guys finish under a blanket for the win. But you know something? Fate did not really play into the hands of this race. Very little attrition up front, no caution flags. The best teams today won the race.
Unofficially, it was a track record for a 400-mile race here at Michigan. The old record, 153.4. Waltrip's average, 153.8. We'll be back with more post-race comments after these messages. Back at Michigan International, where Darrell Waltrip has won the race. The unofficial results show Labonte in second, Bill Elliott third, Harry Gant fourth, and Cale Yarborough finishing fifth. Then a lap down, Benny Parsons, Dale Earnhardt, the number 21 of Buddy Baker, Richard Petty, Bobby Allison, Ron Bouchard, and Ricky Rudd. Go to Bill Elliott, the third-place finisher. He's with Dick.
Bill, you ran so strong, you must be terribly disappointed at this point.
No doubt about it. When it comes down to a situation like that, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do from here in order to prevent this from happening in the future?
I have no idea.
Bill Elliott, very disappointed race driver, wanted to win here very badly this afternoon.
And I think he could have won had the fuel problem not plagued him.
You know, one time I heard Bill Elliott say, I don't know what I'm going to do, when he felt that he had lost a race because of his inability to drive as well as the other drivers. Well, now he drives as well as they do, just because he said, I don't know what we're going to do. I think they're going to solve it. That's my opinion.
The race summary showed at the end of 200 laps, 400 miles, we had 4 different leaders: Bill Elliott, Darrell Waltrip, Terry Labonte, and Cale Yarborough. There were 9 lead changes, and the outstanding and unbelievable aspect of this race, the fact that we had no yellow flags whatsoever. The time of the race was 2 hours, 35 minutes, and 59 seconds. The winning margin, 1 second, and the record average speed, 153.860 miles an hour. We'll give the results of the Ingersoll Rand Pit Crew Championship, and we'll have other things to say when we come back with more from Michigan International Speedway. Back at Michigan International, Darrell Waltrip's team beat Harry Gant's team by 10.23 seconds in the Ingersoll Rand Pit Crew Championship. Dale Earnhardt's team was just 1.06 seconds behind in third place. So not only does Darrell win the race, but his team wins the Pit Crew Championship.
Waltrip, again, really showing how much experience kind of plays into your hands. He lost the center section of this race to Terry Labonte. He lost the first 50 laps, or most of the first 50 laps of the race, to Bill Elliott. But when the chips were down, the experience begins to come through. Not only did Dale run pretty much a perfect race, the last 75 or 80 laps of the race, but also did the crew. They made the right calls at the right time. They judged when they should be really going all out, when they should be holding back just a tad, maybe going about 98% capacity. But all, you can't say it fell into their hands. They raced for it, and they won today. They whooped everybody.
The points battle is going to tighten up also, because Dale Earnhardt, who went into the race as the leader, did not finish in the top 5, and Waltrip and Labonte and Elliott are going to make nice moves as far as the point standings are concerned.
Well, it definitely will go right down to the last race. There's no question of it again.
And let's get some final comments from Dick Berggren, who's been hard at work in the pit area all day.
Well, it turned out that Darrell Waltrip was one of the few people here that really didn't have to win this race in order to keep his job, keep his sponsor happy, but he did it anyway. This is a very, very strong team. Their 4th win. They are trying very hard to win a championship this year.
We'd like to remind you that we will capsulize all the auto racing events from this weekend on Speed Week at 7:30 Eastern Time this Thursday evening. We'd also like to remind you that our next live telecast will be at Darlington, South Carolina, the Southern 500 on Labor Day weekend, and the same day, as a matter of fact, a big doubleheader here on ESPN, coverage of the IndyCar race at Mid-Ohio. The Champion Sparkplug 400 has been brought to you by Pontiac. Test drive a new Pontiac at your Pontiac dealer, because at Pontiac, we build excitement. And by the Asfor Motor Oil Pennzoil, protection worth asking for. And by the makers of Skoal and Copenhagen, for real tobacco pleasure without lighting up.